Chapter 4801. I thought it was just an empty shell. At this time, his eyes were opened, and he was almost stunned. His figure was soft and he almost collapsed to the ground. All Yangxian was startled, and all took a step back, trembling. That kind of existence is no longer what they can imagine, and naturally it can't afford any struggle. As the figure in the emperor's clothes opened his golden eyes, he was surrounded by 4 figures and opened his eyes together. The trend is surging. The air seemed to stagnate. The 4 godlike figures were unsmiling, staring forward. "Sir, let's retreat and leave." Yoshio Yangxian's legs were trembling, and he was already dizzy. In fact, these 4 figures are Chen Qing, Di Qing, Spring and Autumn, and Kui Jing. Even the true body of the emperor who is sitting on the throne and wearing the costume of Moyu Liuyun is all unparalleled. Fake. The reason for this is actually helpless. Originally, Jian Wushuang planned to directly kill some Yangxian who had inadvertently broken in, but somebody saw the previous scene as soon as he left the hall gate. Nearly 100 Yangxian's battles are imposing, even if more than half of the losses are a huge force. In addition to Jian Wushuang's strength recovered to the peak after receiving the perception and inheritance of the 6-Crow Emperor, the strength of the remaining few people has not been fully restored. Jian Wushuang did not count him as his strength was restored to Liu Cheng's unclear conscience. If you play against this team of more than 50 Yangxian, only a few people with swords can match. Even if it is a victory, it is also a terrible victory, not worth the shot. So he took the initiative to drive these Yangxian away. But what he didn't think of was that although the group of Yangxian gallbladders were about to be frightened, they had no idea of escape. Jian Wushuang frowned, secretly glancing at Chen Qing who was standing beside him. Chen Qingdeng immediately grasped the idea, stepped forward, and screamed directly, "Those who break into heaven, die." The sound of Hong Zhong's thunderous explosion thundered Yangxian's psychological defense. "Adult, if you go back and go, you will all fold here if you don't go." The wretched Yangxian trembles, apparently intending to walk away regardless of the next. Lao Cheng Yangxian gritted his teeth without saying a word. He was unwilling. After years of hard work and chance, he found the former heaven. Now he is asked to give up. How can he be reconciled? Like Chen Qing, who was condensed by Shen Feng, seeing that they had no plans to leave, he took a step forward and prepared to warn him once. But because of his too big step, he directly pulled the wine gourd hidden in his waist, and even scattered more than 10 pieces of black mountain top crystals on the ground. The sound of a crisp landing sounded, and the wine gourd drew an arc on the jade ground, and the bones rolled to the foot of the old Cheng Yangxian. The air suffocated. Lao Cheng Yangxian looked down at the newer gourds at his feet, and then looked at the scattered black mountain top crystals, and suddenly he seemed to understand something. "You guys, posing?" Chen Qing looked embarrassed and looked at Jian Wushuang. "War." The simple word resounded. Jian Wushuang suddenly stepped up from the throne, and an invisible long sword had already condensed in his hand. "Bring me to death." Lao Cheng Yangxian, who had come back to God, exasperated, "No one stays." In an instant, 42 Yangxian, 42 Yang rushed up, and directly fought with Jian Wushuang and others. Chen Qing directly patted the real sword at the waist, carrying Wen Jun's sword with a bold move forward. Chuanqiu also directly summoned his 8 arms and rushed forward. Kui Jing, the weakest and without the slightest bottom card, was blocked by Chuanqiu. Unlimited. A whisper sounded, and Qing also started, and a black raven appeared behind him, croaking. Such a trend directly responds to the 42 Yangxian's combined efforts. Zheng. Sheila. The blade was sharp and unmatched, and directly tore the infinite force. The dark black of Chen Qing, the sword intention of Chen Qing, and the angry eyes of the 8 arms of Spring and Autumn all burst at this moment among the public Yangxian. One sword directly shattered an immortal source of immortals. Jian Wushuang turned around and glanced at the meaning of Qing, and then continued to fight. Even if the strength is only restored to less than 60%, but the terrible belonging to Zhu Zhuan Dianxian was still revealed in the first time. The black Wubao phase shattered the fairy source of 10 Yangxian directly. It was only this time that the confrontation came down, and the 43 Yangxian had dropped by nearly 20. The old Cheng Yangxian headed was almost cut off by Jian Wushuang and his sword. Adult, and retreat and. This time, the insignificant Yangxian's words were never finished, and he looked at the invisible blade of his chest with his eyes wide open. It was chopped off with a knife, and Wushuang didn't stay at all. His arms held the hilt, and he carried 3,000 swords straight down. The old Cheng Yangxian's horrified eyes were a little full of anger, and then his arms were shocked, and the space around him suddenly changed. At this moment, it seems to reflect a diamond-shaped colorful huamang, magnificent and fierce. At the same time, there is a needle-like awning, which emerged from each diamond-shaped huamang, and all rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Because this is really too fast, Jian Wushuang can't dodge, when even if there are nearly 1,000 rays of refracting huamang pass through. The indescribable pain of cutting seemed to shatter his consciousness. But these are only blocking Jian Wushuang for a moment. The invisible sword in his hand, because of inertia, finally fell heavily on the shoulder of Lao Cheng Yangxian. With a sneer, a sharp sword, almost splitting him into two. He screamed loudly, the peeper bones on his shoulders shattered directly, and blood spewed out. Jian Wushuang also retreated at the same time, covering her heart. A ray of blood spilled from the corner of her mouth. Since he came to Dianhuan, he had cut off the past, and his ancestral luck and divine power were all returned to the divine universe by him, so he had no so-called fairy source. It is precisely that the most important fairy source without this fairy only let him escape. He has an intuition that the style of becoming an immortal is enough to crush any source of immortals. Old Cheng Yangxian, who was also badly injured, stumbled back, and the dynamism surging around him was dimmed. Perhaps because of the rapid dissipation of Yang Li, the face of Lao Cheng Yangxian began to change rapidly. The ordinary face that is quite mature and founder disappears, replaced by a face full of heroism and richness. After seeing that face clearly, Jian Wushuang's eyes were already dignified. That face was no one else. It was the three emperors, Gongzi Yu, who participated in the battle for the peach in the realm of Zhenwu Yang. But now, his sudden arrival is obviously beyond Jian Wushuang's imagination. As the third emperor under Zhenwu Yang, how could he appear here at this time? Chapter 4802. After undergoing a change in the northern celestial state, the son of the fifth son of Zhenwu Yang was killed by Zheng Ying under the hibiscus tree. It is still less than 10 years from now. Presumably there is already chaos in the entire division, and the remaining 6 sons will inevitably be questioned by Zhen Wuyang and will not act lightly. However, at this time, Gongzi Yu is leading Yang Xian to shuttle through the jurisdiction of the big division. Isn't it true that Zhen Wuyang is suspicious? And how did he discover this past heaven? All doubts could not be answered. Looking at the familiar face, Jian Wushuang had no intention of strangling them to death. At this moment, Chen Qing also found the face of Gongzi Yu, and Zhao Jian Wushuang cast a suspicious look. Young Master Yu, can't die. Jian Wushuang's secret sound line passed into the ears of Chen Qing and others. Chen Qing, Chuanqiu heard the words, and stopped fighting in due course. Originally, I planned to clarify the truth of these 20 or so Yangxian. After hearing Jian Wushuang's words, although I had some unsatisfactory intentions, I still took the momentum of Yanli and let them go. The situation of this great dispute has ceased directly, and the whole heaven has fallen into a strange silence. This kind of destructive situation makes the remaining Yangxian tremble. In these few confrontations, there are only less than 20 Yangxian left. Having stopped the injured young Sun Yu, he has no courage and plan to fight anymore. Now, he just wants to escape from this nightmarish heaven. Let's go. Young Master Yu trembles, and then, with the help of a dozen Yangxian, he quickly left Tianting and disappeared. Looking at the heaven that had fallen into silence again, Jian Wushuang spit out a sigh of breath slowly. The purpose of expelling Gongzi Yu has been achieved. Presumably, he will never step on the ground when he has not grown to a certain point in the future. The reason why he can't kill Gongzi Yu is because he is the third son under Zhenwu Yang Emperor. Once the accidental killing, I'm afraid that the realm is deep. Yu Bo, who can kill with a palm, will bring someone to kill. Jian Wushuang, who has practiced for millions of years, knows that when the strength is not strong enough, caution is the best policy. Since the three of them from the northern celestial state are still in a state of illusion, so naturally they don't have to worry about Gongzi Yu identifying them. So far, everything has come to an end. From the coma of the northern celestial state, he fell into the unknown heaven, and was captured by the Kui leader of the Sand Demon Cave in the Sand Demon Cave. After several battles, it led to the mysterious and unknown heavenly Buddha realm, and he accidentally fell into this. The former heaven realm has received the inheritance of the godless king. Everything seems to be a fantasy like a dream. Jian Wushuang grew up bit by bit, but he also moved forward involuntarily. He randomly picked a jade order to sit on it and motioned to Chen Qing and others to search quickly. After all, the Six-Crow Emperor has completely fallen. It would be a pity if his collection had been kept in dust. Chen Qing and others all couldn't wait to search, but Di Qing didn't leave, but sat down next to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't ask too much about it. In his opinion, they would soon leave each other. At that time, even if Qing completely occupied this heavenly court, he had no opinion. But the sentence that followed Qing shocked him. "Can I follow you?" Di Qing smiled awkwardly, looking a little embarrassed. Jian Wushuang kept silent, but he knew the ending of Master Mo. Perhaps it was guessing his inner thoughts, and Qing quickly said, "You can rest assured that from now on, with me in, others cannot move your finger." In the end, Jian Wushuang looked at him and said, "Because, that's the reason of the Six-Crow Heavenly Emperor?" Yi Qing stunned, and finally said, "Yes, not." Jian Wushuang had already understood his thoughts, and then said softly, "I can tell you the words of the Six-Crow Heavenly Emperor, but it will not be now, because I have not yet understood. If you want to stay by my side because of this, then I will get through as soon as possible, and then tell you the wordless word, and then please leave as soon as possible. I don't want to put an irregular crisis around me." After saying this sentence, Jian Wushuang carried his hands on his back and walked out of heaven slowly. Looking at his back, Yi Qing's eyes showed a strange meaning, and then seemed to be determined in his heart, and quickly followed. "Are you planning to let me be your slave?" Di Qing came to his side and asked. Jian Wushuang glanced at him. "I never had this idea. What's the use of getting a slave? You are approaching me because of the Sixth Emperor, Heavenly Emperor. I will naturally give you what you want. Before that, you can choose to stay with me, but there is no relationship between us." After listening to the truth, I couldn't help saying, "But don't you plan to ask for the same benefits?" "Too lazy to ask for it," Jian Wushuang said softly. "I can give it to you, but I hope you know that neither now nor in the future will do anything that is detrimental to me." After listening to the truth, after a moment of silence, he solemnly said, "I understand." Jian Wushuang no longer said much, scanning this dim heaven with his hands on his back. Nearly 3 days later, Chen Qing, Chuanqiu, Kui Jing and other talents ran out of the heavenly court, and everyone's face was filled with joy. Although the heavenly court has been broken and silent, without any avenues of luck, the Emperor's collection is still unimaginable. Countless rare treasures, Yangxian methods, countless, and even a copy of the mind of the Six Raven Emperor during his lifetime was picked out by Chen Qing, and it was full of the whole ring. Even Kui Jing, who was in a state of sadness from beginning to end, read Audiobook's www.ukanshu.com, was also a little excited, and changed back to the look of that unruly face. He is just a small ancestor-level master, but after such a big scene, how can he suppress the excitement? Predictably, after collecting such a rich collection of emperors, Chuanqiu and Kui Jing were promoted to Yangxian realm, which was already on the agenda. "Let's go." Jian Wushuang looked back at everyone before leaving the old heavenly court. Through the mysterious vortex, 5 figures stood in the void. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and lowered his strength, closing the corner of the raised void and closing it completely. This former heaven, which should not be exposed anymore, and the final destination is to continue to fall asleep until the years are barren. After doing all of this, everything is gone. He looked at Kui Jing, who was beside him. Kui Jing stepped back half a step subconsciously, his eyes a little bit timid, and he felt an inexplicable pressure when facing Jian Wushuang. Chapter 4803. That kind of pressure, even his elder sister Shouqing, and those Da Yangxian monks who easily destroyed the Sand Demon Cave did not have it. The unspeakable breath, such as Yuanju Yuezhi, can't be elusive. Jian Wushuang did not speculate on Kui Jing's mind. He was not disgusted with the last person left in this sand devil cave, who was also covered with cause and effect and mass murder, but he never said he liked it. You are free, you can go where you want to go. Jian Wushuang said softly. Kui Jing was surprised, and a bit of bitterness appeared in his eyes. The sand devil cave was destroyed, and he fell ill again. What place is there for him to live in this vast sky? If he had nowhere to go, but he didn't dare to defy Sword Wushuang, he just stayed where he was. Chuanqiu saw the thoughts in Kui Jing's heart, touched him without trace, and made a wink at him. Kui Jingxin understood the situation and hurriedly looked up at Jian Wushuang. Brother Jian, I can't go anywhere. Can I just follow you? From now on, you will follow. Jian Wushuang heard the words and did not agree with him, just said, after you finish the injury, make plans, and it is too early to say anything. After saying this, Jian Wushuang will no longer drive him away. Kui Jing heard the words, rejoicing in his heart, and hurriedly arched his hands. Thank you, Brother Jian. Finally took a look at this resealed old court. Jian Wushuang turned around, carrying 4 figures, and soon disappeared into the vast void. This time I went to the battle of the North Celestial State, the sun died, and the celestial state of the North Celestial State was destroyed. The celestial bone armor, which was about to be obtained, also disappeared completely. In fact, this time there was a lot of turmoil in Beitian Xianju. From Jian Wushuang and others to Xianju, there is the mysterious Dingxiu and Yangxian selling Heishan Dingjing on the street. Then the mysterious 7 swordsmen appeared, completely disrupted, and wanted to put the sun to death in the heavenly hall of Shaoshuan's Hu. The most beautiful thing was to make Jian Wushuang unimaginable. Zheng Ying, the beautiful woman he saved during the original voyage, was also at the last moment. Fairy source. It was only within these days that an emperor died. All the killings seem to be the same, but they also seem to have been planned. Thousands of thoughts. I am afraid that even the real Wuyang emperor can hardly find out the complexity of this situation. But the only thing up to now, Jian Wushuang can be sure that Zheng Ying will never be with those 7 swordsmen. She is like a ghost, with a very close purpose. Once she succeeds, she disappears completely without a trace. But if it's really not a gang, it's too coincidental to start working on the sun's ink on the same night. Today, only one of the 7 swordsmen died, that is, the heroic woman dressed as a man, who had hung on the walls of the Sand Devil Cave together, but it has long disappeared. I am afraid that only by finding her can I ask what happened in Beishangshangxia. The silver bell mother with the sky-shaped bone armor, the heroic woman left by the 7 swordsmen, Zheng Ying who cut off the ink head of the sun. Now these 3 have disappeared, adding a bit of mystery to the already destroyed North Heavenly State. Even if the surface of the water is calm, no one knows what kind of undercurrent is under the surface of the water. When I came, only Chen Qing and Chuanqiu were around me. When I returned, there were more Qing and Kui Jing around me. For the 2 guys who stayed beside him, Jian Wushuang didn't know how to express his position, but could only wait and see. At this time, they are deep in the void, and countless heavenly planes are dotted in the world like stars. However, these are only in Darciu. For the entire unknown Dianhuan, it is just a drop in the ocean and unimaginable. After simple thinking, Jian Wushuang decided to return to the 6th heaven realm. In any case, it is also the place where he is currently located, and the place closest to Darciu to Gao Shanting, and perhaps more ancient secrets can be obtained. Jian Wushuang had already made a decision in his heart. After returning to the 6th-day realm and refinishing, he tried his best to search for the whereabouts of the Silver Bell Mother. Then go to the so-called celestial world of heaven and see if you can resolve your own causation and mass murder. For the unknown heavenly Buddha realm, Jian Wushuang in the Ming and Ming feels that it will never be simple. The 2 great Yangxian in the same air and the silence are too murderous, and there is still the enlightenment of the monk. Perhaps, there should be more monks like empty wheels in the heavenly Buddha realm. Jian Wushuang secretly said in his heart. 5 figures, shuttle through the void, and continue to fly towards the vast void. When he arrived, he shattered the snow on his shoulders, and the world was bold. At the end of the day, there was nothing in both hands, but it seemed like 1,000 pieces, silent and silent. The people who have already achieved the position of Yangxian have evaded all common things, but with the barrel of Chen Qing, they are destined to return home and do not know so calm. Kui Jing's eyes lit up before him with all kinds of pleadings, and had the same smell. Eventually, Jian Wushuang was persuaded. Then stopped at a plain with plenty of energy and rested to drink. This azimuthal celestial field is vast and has dozens of continental distributions. It can also be regarded as a super-celestial field in this large division. Moreover, Yangxian in the past is not a rare sight. There are Yangxian who still breaks down the red dust, just like Chen Qing, the lower realm is accompanied by wine. But Yangxian is a minority after all, not even the top repair. Going down to Fang Tianyu, I randomly found a restaurant on the mainland, and these 5 figures entered it. An altar was aged and served in turn, with more than 100,000 catties of liquor. Kui Jing, who shares the smell of Chen Qing, started to shove wine with each other. Jian Wushuang, holding a pot of exquisite binaural hip flask in one hand, sat against the window, and looked deep into the street outside the window, wondering what he was thinking about. Di Qing, who is not interested in these old brews, is secretly looking at the guy sitting opposite. Di Qing always felt that he carried a lot of secrets in his body, but he was very clear and clean, and there was an indescribable contradiction. Take care of him, the 6 crows of Heavenly Emperor have the hand, I will not be too late. Di Qing thought so, and then looked leisurely out the window. He has no idea how many years have been quiet on the hibiscus tree. He is full of curiosity about everything. If it is not bound by the sword, he may not be able to wait for it. He wants to destroy several heavens and have fun. At the time of the people's laziness, there were a lot of streets that had been repaired, and the sky was completely dark. Boom! Several extremely powerful breaths, such as the dark clouds covering the top, dispersed and fell. Chapter 4804. For a time, within tens of thousands of miles, all the top repairs were silent. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, then waved his hand, and Yanli enchantment protected the whole restaurant. Boom! The sound of the earth being torn. Then the pavilions overturned and shattered. In the very center of this violent martyrdom, only a restaurant stood upright, and did not even suffer any damage. Kui Jing, who was fighting for wine, shuddered at the sight of the outside scene, but saw the sword Wushuang sitting against the window, still lazy, so he settled inexplicably and continued to drink. Brother Jian, do you need me to investigate? Chuanqiu whispered, ready to fight. Jian Wushuang heard the words and shook his head. No, the troublemaking guys are here. As his words fell, a heavy object fell to the ground. Run, why didn't you run? The thunderous roar sounded. Outside the broken street, 2 skinny bodies fell into the gravel. A Yangxian, like an angry king, stepped the 2 figures into the ground with bare feet. An uncontrollable mumble rang. Behind this Yangxian, there are 5 Yangxian, all with a dark face. Damn miscellaneous things, can't you run well? Withdrawing his feet, the vag-like Yangxian took a grip in the air and held the thin neck directly, lifting him from the ground. Ah! The broken hair stained with mud covered his face, but he couldn't hide his pain. The thick blood flowed down the wound on his skin. Brother, I'm scared. Another leaner figure lay on the ground, hands helplessly shoving away the gravel, seeming to want to stand up. The skinny figure strangled by the neck, slowly and calmly, a pair of bloodshot eyes was lost. Let my brother leave and I will follow you. The King Kong-like Yangxian heard it as if he heard the most ridiculous joke, and said with a grin, You are so miscellaneous, and dare to talk to the conditions of this forum? Go back with this seat, no one can escape. At the end of the conversation, his other big hand, like twisting an ant, carried these 2 thin bodies in his hands. You are so miscellaneous, only for medicine. The thin figure heard this sentence, and the original godless eyes suddenly froze, and then, like a beast, opened his mouth directly to the ear of Yangxian like the diamond. Boom! A slap in his face smashed into his face, and blood poured directly from Chichiao, and he passed out in a flash. The King Kong-like Yangxian disdainfully smiled, and then raised his hand to pick up another figure, and he had to leave. At the next moment, a very cold female voice resounded through the broken earth. "Let them go." Jian Wushuang looked at it in a sound, and suddenly a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. It was a woman in a grey shirt who made a cold voice, whose face could not be said to be soft, but she was full of vigor and self-confidence. And this heroic woman is one of the only remaining 7 swordsmen in the troubled North Changxianzhu. I saw several faces in Sand Devil's Cave, but I don't know where to go. But now, it is really incredible to see each other in this side of heaven. Jian Wushuang raised her brow slightly, already wanting to see what she was going to do next. After shouting that sentence, the heroic woman was not afraid, and her strong strength had already flowed around her. Carrying a thin figure, Vijayana stood in place, and then slowly turned back. After he saw that she was a woman, her violent eyes were full. "Who am I?" It turned out to be a little girl's skin. Yangxian, like a diamond, threw the 2 figures in his hand directly to Yangxian behind him, and then rubbed his palms, and walked towards her without any taboo. A bit of disgust flashed in the eyes of the heroic woman, and then there was a thunder and a long sword, without any signs. Yangxian's eyes narrowed, and his subconscious consciousness was able to escape the terrible offensive. But a very long and narrow blood mark almost cut his neck into 2 pieces. It was just this face-to-face room that gave him a heavy blow. This made him furious, and waved his hand down. The sky dome suddenly collapsed, and an invisible giant palm hit the heroic woman. Her brow furrowed, and the whole figure was like a ghost, running at an unimaginable speed to the Vaj-like Yangxian. The King Kong-like Yangxian was horrified, and she stepped back and said in a few steps, "Crush me." With the explosion, the 5 Yangxian behind him set off. Gathering the power of 6 Yangxian, the unmatched Yanli cage appeared, and the terrible trend caused the ground to tear again. The originally fast-moving heroic girl was also affected, as if she were in a quagmire, and she was a bit struggling. With 1 enemy against 6 Yangxian, even if her strength is at the peak, it is an impossible thing, let alone this state. 6 unmatched strengths lowered, letting her speak directly against the blood. Even if she had the heart, she was unable to return to the sky. "Little Niang Pai actually dared to hurt me. I will ask you today not to survive, not to die." The burst of drink resounded from the mouth of Yang Jing, who was like a diamond, and the chain of Yang Li surged between his palms, and he caught the heroic woman again. But at the next moment, a lazy voice suddenly sounded. "It's really noisy." He turned his head subconsciously to the place where the sound was made, but he saw a black urn altar, and it smashed over. Boom! A dull voice sounded, and the fragrant liquor spread out. The urn altar directly tore the combined blows of 6 Yangxian, and exploded heavily on Yangxian's face like Vajra. Then, he fell to the ground with his head, and simply passed out. It was just a hit, directly made a Yangxian lose his resistance. What kind of avenue is this? Holding a delicate hip flask in one hand and a 3-foot sword in one hand, the sword Wushuang walked slowly, unspeakable free and easy. The 5 Yangxian stepped back at the same time, looking at him with vigilance. The heroic woman covered her heart and slowly backed away, looking at Jian Wushuang's eyes, only shocked and incredible. "Who is your excellency? It is best to judge the situation and stop clashing with me from the Huozongzong. We will not blame anything that happened before." One of them, Jingxian Yangxian, though shocked Jian Wushuang's horror, was unkind. After all, in his opinion, even if Jian Wushuang is even more powerful, can it still be defeated by a dozen or 5? But soon, his thoughts were swallowed into his stomach, his eyes glaring to the maximum. Because he saw that he had a 4-spirit-like figure, walked out of the restaurant not far away, and stood behind the young man in turn. Chapter 4805. Each figure is like Yuanzhu Yuezhi, full of domineering breath. In particular, that figure was dressed in extravagant clothes, and there were 8 rose feathers in the hair. The breath it exuded was already beyond his imagination. Conflict. Li Huozong? Jian Wushuang looked at him, frowning slightly. "Are you also worthy?" Suddenly, a flash of humiliation flashed across the faces of the 5 Yangxian. They are proud of the imperial sect gate from the fire sect, across several heavens, and accept the disciples. Although it is nothing in the big division, The top practitioners in the surrounding heaven are all proud of entering the Lihua sect. But at the moment, he was humiliated by the faceless face. That net face. Yang Shenqiang endured the plan, and said in a deep voice, "You juniors should not be too angry, maybe we will meet again in the future." Jian Wushuang squinted at him, and then shot directly. An unmatched force of strength swept up, and the Yang Xian who was lying on the ground and stunned to death was strangled to become a powder, and no point of Xianyuan was left. All Yangxian was startled. They never thought Jian Wushuang would kill a Yangxian without any signs. "Leave those two boys, I will let you go." Jian Wushuang looked at them softly. Jingmian Yangxian strongly suppressed the anger in his heart, knowing that he was hit by a hard stubble today, but even if he threw down the two thin bodies, he turned and left. The 5 Yangxian, like the 5 streamers, did not intend to leave this side of the sky at all. But the facts are not always as expected. Jian Wushuang raised his hand and threw the real sword to Chen Qing. Chen Qingxin understood, and there was a grin on the corner of his mouth, and his figure disappeared. To cut the grass and eliminate the roots to prevent future troubles, this is his criterion for doing things. But after a while, Tianjiao burst into screams. Jian Wushuang didn't care about those. He carried the hip flask, walked slowly, and finally stopped in front of the two thin bodies and crouched down. "Look up and look at me," he said softly. The dead fish-like figure moved hard, and then seemed to have exhausted all his strength, lifting his head. "Thanks, Master Xie." After uttering this sentence unclearly, he passed out. Shaking his head helplessly, Jian Wushuang stood up and looked at the heroic woman with a complex look not far away. "Come here, I have a few questions to ask you. Don't think about running away, you can't run away." With Jian Wushuang's protection, there is only one restaurant left in the mainland. At this moment, in the main hall of the huge restaurant, in front of a round table, sitting in 8 circles. Jian Wushuang sat in the middle, next to him, followed by Di Qing and others. The heroic woman had also been seated, and she glanced at him from time to time. The two thin and weak bodies sat opposite Jian Wushuang, with 2 eyes staring straight at the table. "Eat," Jian Wushuang said softly. After getting the allowed order, the 2 figures couldn't take care of anything, and swallowed directly. "These 2 boys, it seems that Maro hasn't even grown up yet. What are you doing running around?" Chen Qing looked at the 2 with some surprise. Jian Wushuang was also a little curious, and the 2 boys at the moment looked really immature. And the faces of the 2 are almost the same, just like twins. "Hey, brother, it's delicious." The most immature face, and some silly boy holding a plate of dishes in his hand, he smirked. With a determined look, another kid with a slightly thick face, nodded incessantly, and then quickly stuffed all kinds of food into his mouth. Such 2 skinny guys ate up a table full of dishes at a rate of wind and clouds. But then there was another dish presented, unlimited for them to eat. Jian Wushuang did not speak, and has been watching the 2 of them with great interest for dinner. Although these 2 boys are not even ancestors, they have some realm foundations and should not be so dependent on food. But looking at their food, it seems like they have never had a full meal. I don't know how long after that, the 2 guys who ate madly finally stopped planning to eat again. I touched my belly subconsciously, and my eyes were firm and thin, and I stood up hurriedly, facing the sword Wushuang archery. "Master Cheng Fuse, our brothers have never had a full meal, it's the first time today, it's greatly appreciated." Another silly kid looked at his brother with a grin, and then recounted this remarkably. "I haven't had a full meal since birth." Chen Qing was slightly surprised. The thin body nodded and said frankly, "Our 2 brothers are all alone. When we have a memory, we can only rely on each other and make it difficult to eat a full meal." Chen Qing asked again, "Then you are not honestly staying in your original place, what are you running for?" The thin body heard the words and scratched his head. "My brother is a fool of wits and chaos. I want to take him to see his brain." Such childish remarks made a few smiles on the scene. "Hey, my brother said I'm a fool, I'm a fool." The kid with a stupid gaze grinned again. As his brother said, this kid is indeed a fool who is in a state of chaos. The thin figure scratched his head again, and finally said solemnly, "My name is Song Wuxin, and my brother is Song Wuyan. Here I thank several adults for their life-saving grace, which I will never forget. Where are you going to take him for a look? Jian Wushuang looked at him and then asked. The thin figure named Song Wuxin shook his head, and then said, in the place where I lived before, there was a well-informed old monk who said that my brother's brain is innate and unwise, and there is no way to change it. But I don't believe, I want to find a fairy from, and let the fairy see my brother. The fairy in Song Wuxin's mouth is Yang Xian. Looking at his still hopeful look, Jian Wushuang only sighed in his heart. The innate spiritual wisdom is not open, and it is in a state of chaos, that is to say, such a life should not appear, but it was born because of various opportunities. It is a pure white paper. This blank piece of paper that shouldn't have been born is innately missing, and I am afraid it is difficult to make up. Even if it is supplemented with some kind of supreme secret method, it will cover the original memory. But at least for now, even the essence of Zhujuan Dianxian is helpless. In the end, Jian Wushuang still said, if I say, the fairy can't heal your brother. Song Wuxin stunned, and his eyes flashed a bit of loss, but soon he grinned again. I can't heal a fairy, then I will look for another fairy, and keep searching until I find a fairy who can cure my brother. Chapter 4806. Jian Wushuang asked again, is it going on without aim? Song Wuxin nodded, yes, I walked straight ahead until I found it, or I couldn't move. Are you afraid of death? Chen Qing asked. Song Wuxin grinned again, people like us can earn an extra day, and life and death are things we can consider, not to mention, sometimes death is not necessarily a good thing. Chen Qing immediately shook his head and said, no, two fools. The two of them, in front of this physique with great strength like a prison, seemed very embarrassed and pinched their clothing corners unwittingly. In the end, Jian Wushuang said, this journey is not as simple as you think. If you can't even protect yourself with the easiest way, your end will never be better than today. If you didn't wait for me, you and your brother would have died long ago. Would you still live unharmed until now? If you don't even care about your life, then I advise you not to take your brother to death. Song Wuxin heard Jian Wushuang's words, and he was shocked, but then a bit of bitterness appeared in his eyes. I also want to take him to live, but my natural talent is dull, and the control of Yang Li is so weak that I can't cope with the possible crisis. Jian Wushuang said softly, since the talent is insufficient, it will have to be compensated by the acquired day, or changed in other ways. You, practicing sword? Song Wuxin listened and hurriedly took down the short sword like a burning stick in his waist. He scratched his head a little embarrassedly. I am not particularly proficient in kendo. This sword was picked up by me earlier to act as a defensive role. Jian Wushuang raised his hand to fetch the short sword, pulled out the scabbard. The blade was worn out. I am afraid that some spirit beasts in ordinary heavens may not be able to kill. Just throw this sword, he said without looking up, then looked at Chuanqiu. Chuanqiu, see if there is any real sword. Chuanqiu nodded and began to rummage through the ring quickly. Chen Qing, Chuanqiu, and Kui Jing were in that former heaven, almost looting all the heavenly treasures of the 6 Crow Emperors, and they were almost filled with a whole ring. Soon, Chuanqiu took out a real sword without a sheath and a black sword body directly from Naji, and handed it to Jian Wushuang. The real sword is warm and does not appear cold. The sword body is completely black. Only the seal of the sword is carved with the word Tianji. It is a true treasure that is not weaker than Chen Qingpei's sword. Next. Then Jian Wushuang directly threw the real sword named Tianji to Song Wuxin. He was shocked. Even if he was dumb and knew the weight of the real sword in his hand, he could not speak for a while. If you want to cure him, you have to make yourself strong. Jian Wushuang looked at him, his eyes gleaming with a golden orn. Song Wuxin swallowed his throat and embraced the real sword tightly with his arms. Since then, for 7 consecutive days, no one has left this heaven. The reason is that Jian Wushuang has always taught Song Wuxin the most basic sword style and comprehend the sword meaning. Brother Chuanqiu, I thought Brother Sword was a stranger, but now it seems to be approachable. You said I would ask him any questions about the realm, would he tell me? Above the eaves of the restaurant, Chuanqiu glanced at Kui Jing and smiled. This kind of problem will naturally tell you that you will know when you get along for a long time. In fact, Brother Jian is not a person who is too cold and takes care of the people around him. Kui nodded, looking thoughtfully at the one that just stood, with a striking figure, and the light deeper in his eyes became firmer. 7 days, but flashed away. He opened his eyes slowly when the thin body gradually swelled with mist. Let's go, Jian Wushuang said concisely, and after speaking the word, he turned to prepare to leave. With a thump, Song Wuxin knelt on the ground, facing his back, knocking heavily on more than 10 loud heads. With a stupid look, Song Wuyen, who only knew how to laugh, saw his brother kneel and hurriedly knelt down, also knocking more than 10 loud heads. Adult, I have spent half of my life in Song Wuxin, and others have never granted me half of the favor, which has caused my brother all the hardships. But today, by the grace of a meal, the grace of a sword, the grace of a thought, Song Wuxin has nothing to offer. I hereby swear that for 10,000 years, no matter what the result will be, I will rush to the adults, Mingtian. Jian Wushuang did not look back, but released Yanli Qingfeng to hold up his brother. Don't think too much. The reason why I do this is purely because of a whim, not asking for anything in return. As for you, let's live and talk. At the end of the sentence, Jian Wushuang's figure stopped again and walked away slowly. Song Wuxin went forward a few subconsciously, but eventually stopped at the same place and stopped moving forward. Then he leaned back and picked up Song Wuyen, skimming towards the corner of the sky. Although staying in this heaven for 10 days, but a moment. In between, the heroic woman had to recover from the injury after a little recovery. But with the guards of the Qing dynasty, Chen Qing and others, she could not finally escape her. Let's talk. Why did you go to Beishangshangxia? Sword asked calmly without carrying both hands. The heroic woman's face was cold, but inexplicable anger appeared in her eyes. You'd better answer honestly, otherwise your ending will not be much better than the previous Yangxian. Chen Qing threatened coldly. The heroic woman snorted softly. Even when confronted by Jian Wushuang, Yi Qing and others were not afraid. If you want to start as soon as possible, why bother to talk more? This is not like your style a while ago. As soon as these words came out, Yu read books www.ukanshu.com. Jian Wushuang frowned. You answered truthfully. I will let you go once. Are you 7 swordsmen, going to the northern Jiangxianzhu? Is the town killing the sun? She sneered. Don't you think you're quite stupid about asking? Do you think I will answer? His mother, I must give you a lesson. Chen Qing exasperated, raising her hand to teach her. But immediately, Jian Wushuang stopped Chen Qing and looked at her. It is not of interest to me if your purpose is to kill the Sun Mo, but I am interested in the kind of forces behind you. To the point, it will aim to assassinate the emperor. The heroic woman was shocked and flashed in a panic. You can go. Jian Wushuang opened her mouth, and then signaled that she could go. She was stunned, and apparently didn't expect him to let her go so easily. But the heroic woman did not hesitate too much, and she was ready to leave in a flash. Chapter 4807. Just as her body was about to leave, a voice put her back in place. Jian Wushuang suddenly realized something and said, Have you ever seen a girl with bells on her body? As soon as the words came out, there was a flash of anger in the eyes of the heroic woman. I sent that with you. Have you seen her? Jian Wushuang asked. I've seen it. She gave me a dead hand not long ago, thinking I was dead, and disappeared after taking my things. Jian Wushuang only felt like a drum in his heart. Where did you go? This time, she didn't stay any longer, and her figure disappeared. It's a matter of the sky-shaped bone armor. Jian Wushuang can't calm down. Just as he was about to catch up, a subtle but clear voice rang in his ears. Dami Tian. The 3 words were imprinted on Jian Wushuang's mind, making him frown. Another unknown place. And is the silver bell, which bears the bone armor of the sky pattern, really there? In this vast domain, trying to find a person aimlessly is a delusion. But with a possible location, all goals are shortened. Although he was not sure whether the heroic woman's words were true, Jian Wushuang had already made a decision in his heart and went to the so-called Dami Tiantan. After all, the sky-shaped bone armor in Yinling's hand is extremely important to him. In this endless study of the great world, so far, the sky-shaped bone armor is the closest thing to Xian Yi, and it is likely to hide a big secret. So he must collect these bone armor as much as possible. After making up his mind, Jian Wushuang did not stay here, and immediately carried everyone back to the Six-Day Realm. The great division developed by the Emperor Zhen Wuyang, after many years of hard work, has swallowed several emperors in the ancient era, and their territory has become too vast, and I am afraid that there are few emperors' territory that can be used with it. Compared. Even if Yangxian shuttles in the sky, it is quite a time-consuming thing. As a result, there are some magic circles between some super-celestial fields, and they can reach the designated place through the connection of Xianwenyan. However, this kind of magic circle has the disadvantage of being unstable, so it is rarely used by Yangxian, and honestly rely on its own strength to travel. After several years, the familiar Six-Day Realm came into Jian Wushuang's eyes. He looked back at the four godlike figures behind him, and then stepped into the realm of 6 days. Perhaps it was through the great changes in the Northern Celestial State, and the Northern Celestial State under the control of the Little Emperor was completely wiped out, and there was almost no vitality. Looking at the direction of Degushan, Jian Wushuang hesitated for a moment, and finally decided to return to Shaogushan first. But when he entered Shaogushan, Xiaodijun was surrounded by the thin purple robe, and it seemed that he had been waiting for a long time and greeted him directly. "Sword Master, Xiaodijun has been waiting for you for a long time, and come with me." He nodded toward Jian Wushuang, and then led forward. A line of 5 figures ran towards the most central hall of Shaogushan. When the cloud and mist disappeared, Jian Wushuang's figure came to the front of the hall, and his eyes also looked at the square in front of the main hall. There, he sat cross-legged in a thin figure. Seemingly, the pale emperor pale to the extreme opened his eyes, and after seeing Jian Wushuang, he stood up directly to meet. But he hadn't walked 2 steps before falling back on the ground again. The thin purple robe hurriedly helped him up. "Brother Jian, I know you will come back," he said weakly. Jian Wushuang nodded. "Are you all right?" The little emperor shook his head. "It's okay, the whip is getting too much, it's all skin trauma." The thin purple robe added on the side, the emperor's anger was thoroughly investigated because of the matter of the 5 emperors, and the other emperors were lashed out for thousands of sticks for various reasons. The little emperor looked at him and whispered, "Brother Jian, the sun is dead." Jian Wushuang nodded silently. "I know, I was there at the time." He was slightly startled. "Brother Jian, who knows who killed him?" Jian Wushuang said, "I never knew that it was a mysterious person who broke the fairy source of the sun Mo. Brother Jian, can you find the sky-shaped bone armor you need?" Jian Wushuang shook his head. The clue disappeared again. "Don't say this, you go all the way and rest in the advanced palace," Xiao Dejuan said, and then looked at the 2 strange figures behind Jian Wushuang. "What are these 2? "It's 2 like-minded friends I met on the road, temporarily living next to me." The little emperor asked no more, and then led Jian Wushuang to the palace. The death of Gongzi Mo has so far left most of the major divisions in a dignified atmosphere. Although the emperor has not carried out a thorough investigation, I am afraid that for a long period of time, there will not be peace between the various heavens. Sitting next to Jian Wushuang, Xiao Dejuan analyzed, "Brother Jian, if the news or clues of the sky-shaped bone armor are interrupted, it is better to sit back and spend this period of time, the safest." What Xiao Dejuan said is not false. This time, all the way back to the 6th heaven realm, the atmosphere between the various heaven realms is already dignified, and there is a feeling of undercurrent surging. But Jian Wushuang couldn't wait. Once Yinling left the so-called demission, the clue of the word pattern bone armor that day was really broken. He has decided that after a period of rest, he will go to demission to find Yinling. The voice of the little emperor sounded. "Shortly after the death of Prince Mo, our emperor summoned us all to the heavenly court to thoroughly investigate all the news about Master Mo. It was also at that time that there were irresistible rumors that I killed the Sun Zi Mo, because before the Northern Celestial State was destroyed, a large number of Montenegro crystals appeared in the Northern Celestial State www. TL Novelle. I was lashed out for 4,000 sticks because of this." Jian Wushuang heard the words and moved his heart. He thought of the group of top repairers who sold Heishan Dingjing in Xianzhu when he first entered the Northern Celestial State. Chuanqiu almost died in the hands of a mysterious Yangxian. The Montenegro crystals flowing in the northern celestial state can already be sure that someone deliberately sells. And this matter can be known by Heaven Court and Junwu Yang, and there is only one possibility that someone intentionally spread it. The result also clearly achieved its purpose. The spears of the killing of the Sun Mo were all directed at the little emperor. Jian Wushuang did not intend to conceal, but even if he would be in the North Changxianzhu, he told the little emperor. That is to say, before you entered the northern celestial state, did anyone else set up a situation that framed this seat? It really is a good deal. The little emperor's eyes were cold, but he was really angry. Chapter 4808. Jian Wushuang nodded. It is already certain that the guys have done this for a long time. It seems that I can't succeed in killing me, and I've changed hands to kill other emperors, he sneered. It's really a good plan. The little emperor asked again, speaking of it, did you say that the Sun Mo died in the hands of a mysterious woman? Jian Wushuang nodded, but did not say Zhang Ying's name. Being able to have such energy, and simply kill the Sun Mo, Brother Jian may wish to guess, who will these guys send? Xiao Dejuan looked at him with a meaningful meaning. In fact, after the complete destruction of the northern celestial state, he had doubts that he was able to mobilize 2 great Yangxian, 7 extraordinary Yangxian, and the situation that brought disaster to the east. That is the mutual killing between their emperors. Little Emperor smiled, it seems that you have guessed Brother Jian, but without evidence, no one can guess who is one of our brothers. I just hate it now, why wasn't the sun dying? This confusing situation is far from clear in 3 or 2 sentences, let alone the conclusion of the coffin, otherwise the heavenly court will find out who the real murderer is. Jian Wushuang does not plan to continue this topic anymore, after all, there is no nutrition. After pondering over and over again, Jian Wushuang still made up his mind and looked at the little emperor said, do you know who is the domain of the heavens controlled by who? Little emperor raised his eyebrows, his face was strange. Brother Jian, what do you ask about this? Jian Wushuang said, because, I heard the news, it is very likely that the sky-shaped bone armor is in the sky. He said in a meaningful way, this big Mitian, by the way, you must be familiar with it is the domain of the jurisdiction of the second emperor. The sun is in charge of the heavenly domain, Damien Tian? For a time, Jian Wushuang's brow furrowed slightly. The second emperor of the imperial prince was the one who was defeated by Jian Wushuang in the battle for the peach. In some ways, it would be a headache to have a hostile opponent like a son. Judging from his style of doing things, and his determination, the meticulous character is a very difficult opponent. What's more important is that he has endless means, no matter how bright or dark, he can inadvertently injure his opponent. Originally, Jian Wushuang planned to reduce the conflict with him after the dispute between Xiandao, but now he knew that the place where Yinling might go was actually the domain of the master. This is even more tricky. I am afraid that he will appear in the domain of the sun's correction by then, and he will be directly killed. At the same time, Jian Wushuang felt weird. It was clear that Yinling was the woman of the sun's ink. Why did he escape to the heaven of the sun? Look at the heroic woman when she left, it didn't seem to be lying. The news of the sky-shaped bone armor is very likely to be true. Brother Jian, do you plan to go to Dami Tian? No, I disagree. Xiao Dijun frowned, in this kind of node, even if you can safely reach Dami Tian, Gongzi Jiao is likely to find it in the first place. You. Once discovered by him, for the holiday between us, I am afraid. Jian Wushuang is also worried about this. Gongzi Jiao is definitely not a good fellow, even terrible. If it is discovered in the so-called demission, it is definitely an endless situation. But he has no retreat. One of the most important reasons why he came to Dianhuan was to find Xian Yi and Lao Zun to unravel the secrets that had bound him. At the same time, there are also secrets about the divine realm of the early days and the divine universe. With the growth of his own realm, he originally thought that there is no secret divine universe, but it is still somewhat secret. Those gods who had seen him in the mournful place for so long did not know how long they existed. Why did they fight? That was like a shocking appearance. Who was the old man who stopped Jian Wushuang when he was going forward, and why did he disappear in the end? And that one of the extreme seas, Laro Zun, which does not belong to the divine universe, is silent in the divine universe. The most important point is what kind of existence of divine power, and whether the universe he once was a reincarnation. These are probably only known by finding Xian Yi and Laro Zun. Right now, the sky-shaped bone armor is the only clue that must not be broken. Even if the gigantic ruler is the Emperor Zhenwu Yang, he must go there. I've already thought about it, I have to go to the last one anyway. Jian Wushuang looked at Xiaodi Jundao. Really? Really go? Then I will go with you anyway this time. Jian Wushuang shook his head. In order to avoid exposure, this time I plan to go forward by myself. But nobody cares for you, I assentee it more dangerous. Xiao Dijuan frowned. Let's talk about it later, I plan to take a break. Jian Wushuang said, but you can't go with me anyway. The problem is even more difficult if it is discovered. Little Emperor knew the benefits, and finally sighed helplessly and got up and patted him on the shoulder. Brother Jian, you have a good rest for a while, then I will discuss some things with you. As the figures of Xiao Dijun and others left, Chen Qing, Chuanqiu and others who had been eavesdropping outside the hall flooded into the hall. Brother Sword, are you going to the lousy again? Bring me Chen Qing, be sure to worry free, even if the sun corrected me, I must honestly bow my head. Chen Qing grinned excitedly. Chuanqiu immediately said, there is also my brother. I will go with you too, there is a mutual care between each other. Since you all go, then I will follow. Kui Jingfu agreed. Jian Wushuang was helpless. Be quiet first. This time is not like the one in Beishang Shangxia. I have to deal with the sun's correction, and I am looking for something, not revenge. Chen Qing, your figure is too prominent to go. If I am not wrong, in spring and autumn, there is a condensed source between your eyebrows. It should be promoted to Yangxian soon. Just stay in Shaogushan and break through. At this time, Yi Qing, who had been silent, said suddenly, this time, let me go with you. Jian Wushuang glanced at him, and it seemed that only Qing Qing was the most suitable candidate. Being Zhujuan Dian Immortal, even against ordinary Dian Immortal, is the existence that will easily crush it. With the essence of Qing as a guarantee, I am afraid that only Heaven's Court can move him. Then Jian Wushuang nodded, confirming the candidate for this day. Chapter 4809. Under his decision, Chen Qing stayed behind for 6 days. Because Chuanqiu and Kui Jing, after stealing a lot of gems pill sealed by Emperor Liu Yaro on the road, they have been promoted to different degrees. Also let him stay behind. This time he went to Da Mitian under the control of Gongzi Deng. Jian Wushuang only decided to move forward with the meaning of Qing. After making a decision, he went to the square outside the hall to recuperate and recover. Chen Qing and others also set their own interest rates. Since the collapse of the North Heavenly State, the trauma to them has been so heavy that they have not recovered their strength after returning to the Six-Day Realm. Without the inheritance of the 6 Crow Emperors, Jian Wushuang's strength will certainly not return to its peak. Now, he said that it was nursing and recovery. In fact, he has already begun to investigate the 6 Crow heavenly scripture that was stored in his body and in his consciousness. Di Qing followed behind him incessantly, and the longing that could not be concealed in his eyes almost overflowed. Jian Wushuang shook his head helplessly, and did not care about him, and proceeded to explore the 6 crows. Tai Qing also became nervous and concentrated, even more tense than him. At this moment, Jian Wushuang, who seemed to be an old monk in his mind, suddenly came slowly. What is your relationship with Gongzi Mo? Ah! Di Qing stunned, then reacted after a while, and said after a moment of contemplation. Actually, we are a kind of interest relationship, but it is far from being a friend. After all, we all take what we need. Speaking of which, Diqing touched his nose a little embarrassedly. He wants my protection, and I want some luck from his emperor. Yongzi Mo's emperor? Zhenwu Yang's luck, what to do? Jian Wushuang looked at him. Di Qing did not conceal anything. Every Chinese New Year, Master Z will give me a ray of Emperor Wayang's luck for me to understand, but it has little effect. To that mysterious emperor is lucky. Jian Wushuang heard the words and said, is the emperor above the 9-turned Dian immortal? Di Qing shook his head, Emperor also belongs to the realm of Dayan Immortal, but Dayan Immortal is by no means equivalent to the Emperor, and it can even be said to exist in two completely with the Emperor. If you want to become an Emperor, you must understand and derive your own Emperor's luck. Only then can you create a heavenly court and control the avenues of countless heavens. I've been trapped in Jujuan Dayan Immortal for a long time, and I will soon forget the beginning. There was a flash of fatigue in his eyes. If I don't say it, I'm afraid you won't believe it. I'm actually the same era as the Emperor Zhenwu Yang of this big sect. But he realized and derived the Emperor's luck during the 5th turn of the Dayan Immortal, and I was trapped in the 9th turn. 2. Speaking of which, he sighed. After listening to Jian Wushuang, he probably understood a little bit, and said slowly, the practice is the way to the end. The cultivation is only the perception and control of the heavenly path and the luck. This mysterious and profound thing is far from being understood by talent. The only thing I can do is to feel, to be appropriate. Although I said a little empty, but this is the case. Your word, your luck, maybe one day in the future, it may come to your mind. The meaning was silent. He began to relive the meaning of Jian Wushuang's words, and seemed to be thinking about something. Jian Wushuang no longer speaks much, sinking into contemplation and beginning to conquer the 6-crow heavenly emperor in his consciousness. This 6-crow heavenly emperor text is the last sentiment inheritance of the 6-crow emperor. It is absolutely impossible to say that the sword is unparalleled. He has an intuition, even if he realizes a point, it will be a tremendous change for now. But to realize that this kind of thing is not to invite guests to dinner, as a matter of course, it contains unknown big variables. This is Jian Wushuang's first contact with the Emperor's Avenue, and it is naturally very nervous. In divine consciousness, the 6-crow heavenly emperor presents a unique huazi, which gives life a sense of awe and pilgrimage, and reveals a breath of antiquity. Jian Wushuang was transformed into a fictitious form, walking in the sky of his consciousness. After nearly 10 million years of practice, he has gradually grown from the end of the day to the present, and his consciousness has already reached perfection when he was at the ancestor level, becoming a sea of ever-changing sky. In his vast immense consciousness, he can go to the corner where he wants to go in a flash. The 6-crow heavenly scripture occupied more than half of the space in his consciousness, resembling a flying bird sleeping in the clouds. And the closer to the realization, an unbearable blaze swept through, burning all the clothes worn by Jian Wushuang's phantom, exposing a solid chest. After his arm, which was cut off by Emperor 6-crow, was remodeled, a terrible breath flowed under the skin of the entire arm, as if dark blue blood was flowing. At the same time, Jian Wushuang also felt that in the divine universe, the blood of the ancestor and phoenix left by Feng Qi, the ancestor of the Feng ancestor Feng Qi, had become full from the original decline. Everything seems to be done by the figurative 6-crow heavenly emperor. Jian Wushuang was naked with his chest, and the long hair tied behind him broke through the belt, and flew in the air, and the sacred lines of the gods flowed in the hair. He walked slowly, facing the dim cloud that was falling asleep, with a magnificent look, and reached out with a finger. In an instant, the mountains and seas were wiped out, and the sun was dying, and the entire sky of consciousness set off an immense momentum. Then the misty cloud became a bird. The dark cyan bird has a hexagonal head, each corner is a different color, magnificent and mysterious. It opened its eyes, and the pure golden pupil seemed to see Jian Wushuang through. The eyes are opposite, as if separated by a whole period of time, with a barren, ancient silence, making him unbearable. He feels that every cell and pore in his body is under a heavy load, and he can't bear to fall apart. Go home, this is not the luck you can control today. You can have it only when the sea is full of dust and the catastrophe is coming. The bird with a hexagonal head and billions of rose feathers, looking at Jian Wushuang, said the truth. At the moment, Jian Wushuang, who is suffering, can't speak. He can't move at all and can't move. His whole body is completely captured by that kind of breath. A whiff of sensation of breath, like nothing, wanted to get into his body desperately. At this moment, he just couldn't run. Chapter 48:10. That is, at the same time, Jian Wushuang's real body suddenly showed an unimaginable and terrifying luck. The truth of sitting and thinking hard next to him was startled. Then Ching Ching came back to his eyes, and his eyes were extremely hot. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's body was surging with an unknown breath. It was very breathtaking, and it was exactly the same breath as the Six-Crow Emperor in the former heavenly court. Yi Qing was suppressing his inner restlessness, but soon his heart forced him to extend his hand to Jian Wushuang. With only one breath, just one breath, he murmured, and then leaned close to Jian Wushuang's real body. At the next moment, he looked blue and purple instantly, only to realize that the true power in the meridian inside the body was ingested by some unknown power. At the same time, his meridians couldn't bear that kind of tearing and collapsed. As a 9-turned-day fairy, almost at the top of the fairy body, can't bear this power, then this power can only be the breath of the emperor. Jian Wushuang. Wake up soon. Di Qing hissed, and blood was pouring from his pores. Sword Wushuang in his own consciousness is also suffering at the moment. He is completely unable to control himself, and can only let all kinds of breath flow into his body. The flying bird with a hexagonal head couldn't calm down either. A pair of golden eyes shot directly out of Huang Huang Jinwei, instantly cutting off the weird suction on Jian Wushuang's true shadow. Then the flying bird opened his beak and spit out the prestige, and expelled him directly out of the consciousness. After the sword Wushuang's real shadow completely disappeared, the flying bird relapsed into silence, and the streamer emitted by the 6 crow heavenly characters slowly circulated. Out of the sky, Jian Wushuang violently opened his eyes, and swallowed one's strength. He only felt the pain of the tears of the mind, and then passed out. The meaning around him, the breath has already languished to the extreme. Bitter, bitter me. The coma took a full year to wake up. Originally thinking that Wuji Wushuang would wake up afterwards, and did not find any harm to himself. Instead, he was full of strength, and the realm was firmly at the peak of Yangxian. It's just that the clear breath around him is a bit weak, like the stage of slow recovery and slow recovery. Jian Wushuang didn't care. Since the 6-raven heavenly emperor was not something he could touch today, he wouldn't touch it, but set about preparing to go to demission. Are you okay? How did you make this look? He curious as he looked at the faint breath. Di Qing shook his head again and again. I'm fine, I just suffered a little injury. Jian Wushuang nodded, no longer asked, prepared for the next few days. In the spring and autumn period, 1,000 pieces were screened, and the peculiar pill, which was collected by Emperor Liu Yaro, was put into the Naji and handed to him. Brother Jian, you must bring these. All of them are selected by the 3 of us in the collection, and each one has a magic effect. Jian Wushuang nodded and took it, and the Dmitri where the young sun corrected was bound to be 100 times more dangerous than the northern heavenly state of the young sun. According to the sun's calm and cautious temper, I am afraid that the entire sky is like an iron barrel. These rare pill treasures collected by Emperor 6-Crow may play a key role at a certain node. And Brother Jian, since we cannot follow you to that big sky this time, we will not be idle. Chuanqiu, Chen Qing, and Kui Jing followed the words of Jian Wushuang. The 3 of us intend to set up an auction house outside these 6 days. Auction house? Jian Wushuang heard the words and suddenly couldn't cry or laugh. Why, how many of you still lack money? Can you spend those mountain-like black mountain top crystals? Chuanqiu heard that and scratched his head. It's just one aspect of opening an auction house in these heavens to sell something. The more important thing is to exchange things for things. The treasures we searched in that heaven were too many, but there are nearly half of the treasures of heaven and earth. Instead of keeping them, it is better to exchange something that can benefit Brother Jian. The best of all. Jian Wushuang only understood this when he heard this. The auction house that Chuanqiu, Chen Qing, and Kui Jing wanted to set up was all prepared for themselves. Even if they shook their heads, spring and autumn, I have no opinion about setting up an auction house, but be sure not to take out too many treasures at once to avoid contaminating some unnecessary troubles. Also, you don't have to be the treasure that you can get for anything for your own sake. You only need to use it for yourself. Improving your own strength is the top priority. Chen Qing grinned. Brother Sword, you can rest assured, this time the auction house was built by me personally, without relying on any one of the heavens. Then I will call some old brothers to station. Even if the real Wuyang Emperor came, I have to honestly pay me a head fee. Chuanqiu also smiled, adding, Brother Jian, anyway, you will be the master behind our auction houses in the future. Jian Wushuang couldn't cry or laugh, it's up to you to do everything. After 10 days, Jian Wushuang ran to Dami Tian with Yi Qing. As he was about to leave the 6-day realm, the little emperor gave him a gold and jade bicollar ring. Then he told him, Brother Jian, you have to remember that Domitian is no better than the northern celestial state, and Gongzi has always had the heart of a male, and his means are also 100 times stronger than that of Gongzi Mo. I also heard that he has the presence of Dian Immortal under his seat. Even if the situation is urgent, you must not fight him in Dai Tian. Jian Wushuang took the ring and nodded. Okay, I remember. The little emperor stepped forward again and said in a deep voice, if Brother Jian has any trouble in Dami, I will inevitably be buried with my son. Jian Wushuang was slightly uncomfortable, and then said, relax, I will be fine, and I will come back when I find something. The little emperor nodded and said, when that ring is key has a great effect, and it should not be used unless it is absolutely necessary. He nodded, and then carried the meaning of Qing, turning into 2 waves of fright and plunging into the void. Your Highness, we should go back. The thin purple robe bowed his head. The little emperor did not answer, his eyes were dignified, and he said in a long while, Ma'am, who do you think the person next to him will be? I didn't know it, but it must have been in his eyes. It must be not ordinary people. Really. Why do I think he has a very familiar feeling? It's strange. The rapid gang wind wanders in the void, and even the stars can tear. The non-ancestral top repairs across the heavens can cross that gang wind, and only Yangxian can resist it for a long time, traveling through the heavens and the world. There are 2 figures, just like Jing Hong passing through hundreds of millions of voids in a flash, swimming in boundless territory. These 2 figures are Jian Wushuang and Qing Qing. Chapter 48:11. Jian Wushuang is completely blind to this entire division. Obviously, Qing Qing is no better than him. Although he was in the same era as Zhen Wuyang, he did not know what happened, so that he did not understand the entire big domain. This time, because there was no way to lead Chen Qing, Jian Wushuang only knew the general direction of Dami Tian, but did not know where the shortcut was. Otherwise, let's try the so-called teleportation fairy array. Jian Wushuang looked at Di Qingdao. Transfer fairy array? Isn't it the formation that Zhen Wuyang had built before the annexation war? Di Qing thought for a moment. Yes, I still believe in that kind of fairy array, used to communicate the strength of the various heavens. As long as the immortal pattern is perfect, it can carry nearly 10,000 monks. Jian Wushuang nodded, let's try it. In order to hide his whereabouts and not be suspected by others, he has been traversing rapidly from the 6-day realm to nearly half a year. He and his 2 talents came to a remote realm that had a fairy array. Looking at the more than 10 famous practitioners who were stationed in the immortal array, who were sleeping soundly, Jian Wushuang stomped the void with his feet, and suddenly the momentum was lifted, and the more than 10 famous practitioners were all lifted up. Who? The grey-faced man awakened from the void, and a leading young man shouted. Hey, boy, where can you reach this fairy array? Di Qing asked in a deep voice. Because the facial features of Diqing are 3-dimensional, even if you don't need to release the power, you only need to frown your brows to reveal a terrible momentum. The top practitioners who had planned to rely on more people to suppress him were also inexplicably honest. Seeing Jian Wushuang, he directly reached over and threw a small bag of Montenegro top crystal. The leading young man's eyes were suddenly glorious, and all his previous unpleasant faces disappeared. Good Lord, our Shanghai Immortal Array was built by the Dian Immortal under the seat of the Emperor Wuyang, and has an ancient history. You can go wherever you go. There are heavens in the way, Tian Yi Tian, Luohai Tian Yu, and Qing Qing Tian Yu. Looking at the young man with the same name as the top chef, stop. You can say if you can reach Shanghuang Tian Yu. Shanghuang Tian Yu is a heaven close to Domitian without any association. During this trip, Jian Wushuang asked Xiaodijun and others first, so he became familiar with it. Shanghuang Tian Yu, that hasn't been a place where monks have been to in a long time. There was a reminder of a short stature repair, but he was quickly glared back by the young top repairer. Then young Dingxiu quickly put the top of the Black Mountain into his arms, and then nodded, "I can go, of course when I am." The two adults are at ease, standing in the middle of the fairy array, and they will arrive as soon as they open their eyes. Jian Wushuang and Yi Qing looked at each other, and then walked towards that fairy array. The fairy array approached the sky in the form of eyes, condensing in the void, emitting an ancient halo. In the eyes of this fairy array, there are nearly 100 thick fairy lines flowing, which is not bad. Two adults, stand firm. The young man led by the head shook his arms, and suddenly a strong force turned into a stream of light and poured into the fairy array. Combined with the strength of the top 10 repairs, this ancient immortal array rotates, and between the immortal patterns, the figures of Jian Wushuang and Di Qing disappeared directly. "Who?" The young man breathed heavily. "Boss, I am afraid that this magic circle is going to go up and down a bit, and the Xianwen should not be able to support it," said the little Dingxiu again, and there was a worry in his eyebrows. The young man Dingxiu immediately said, "Nonsense, I am sure I can't reach the wasteland. The fairy patterns of the fairy array are broken in half, and can they be sent that far? If that fairy array breaks up halfway, I am afraid they will all be hit hard. I had expected that I would throw them into the nearest sky in advance. They can't stand it. At most, they will get lost. And looking at the appearance of the two of them, I certainly don't know that Shanghuang is in a mysterious place. Without earning them, I will have trouble sleeping and sleeping." As the stream of light in front of them disappeared, the two people stood in a pretty mysterious landscape. "It's so fast. It doesn't seem to even have 10 breaths." Jian Wushuang was a little surprised. This fairy array was too fast. Di Qing is also a bit surprised. At such a speed, it is really good. Jian Wushuang returned to his mind and looked at this energetic, mysterious mountain forest with some wonder. According to Little Emperor, the wilderness near Dami can be regarded as a rough place, endless flying sand and stones, and bad weather, even if Yangxian is not willing to stay. It was the main battlefield where the Emperor Zhen Wuyang fought against another emperor. The power of the emperor turned the entire heaven into nothingness. In the end, Zhen Wuyang, who won the battle, reconstructed the celestial realm, and named it a wasteland. However, the heaven at the moment is completely different from the Shanghuang described in Xiaodi Junker's mouth, and there are even two kinds of existence. Is this really a wasteland? Jian Wushuang was a little puzzled, but naturally no one could answer him, because Di Qing was also in a daze. It seems that the environment here is quite good, and there should be a top repair or Yangxian living. Find the monk and ask first. Jian Wushuang made up his mind in his heart, and then asked the way forward. The mountains and rivers of Xie live together, and the water and grass are luxuriant. As Jian Wushuang searched for the monk's trail 1 million miles away, the clouds of the heavenly sky suddenly forced her to become dark. At the same time, the mountain forest that was originally like a fairyland was suddenly dimmed by the change of clouds, and the cold wind burst. What's the situation? Jian Wushuang frowned, then signaled to Qing Qing to hide his breath together. Soon after they concealed their breath, strange smiles resounded from Shino, and finally gathered in the forest. Jie. With this weird smile resounding a few moments later, from this forest, more than a dozen strange shapes appeared from far and near. Each of these weird physiques is tall and sturdy, each of which is a few feet tall, with an ugly face, black body, eyes, and thick canine valgus at the same time, quite like a skinned monkey. These more than 10 ugly faces are all jumping forward. Even if they are ugly, they cannot stop the smiles on their faces. If you look carefully, the reason why these ugly figures jump forward is because in the middle of them, a flower sedan is carried. Hua Hong Yin Hong was so dripping with blood that it seemed weird in the dark forest. Jian Wushuang, who completely concealed his breath, saw this scene, frowning slightly, and then looked at Qing Qing. The purpose of Qingxin is to grasp the spirit, and even if you want to release the momentum of the power. At this moment, a seemingly struggling whimper rang through the sedan chair. Chapter 48:12. The whimper was obviously made by the woman, and the sound of kicking and shaking shook the entire sedan chair. But those ugly and giant-looking figures didn't care. and continued to leap forward happily. "Help Wu!" A murky voice was heard through the sedan chair. "Rushing relatives." Jian Wushuang looked at those ugly bodies, frowning slightly. "I'm going to kill it directly, and I will find out later," Di Qing said. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, and he saw at the first time that these ugly forms were not good, and the special power that overflowed was neither like the strength but with a certain uncomfortable atmosphere. Immediately, I Ching stretched out his hand, and the irresistible force directly stirred up. The dark forests of Shino are bright under the impact of guilt-like diffusivity, and even the gloomy sky is clear. The more than 10 ugly forms that were only the ancestral level of top cultivation realm, how could they resist the dynamism of ditching? They did not even react, they were directly burned into green smoke. The sedan fell to the ground with a thud, and fell silent. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing immediately revealed their bodies from the forest, just as they were preparing to take a step forward. Those ugly bodies that were directly burned into blue smoke, like sand gathering into towers, condensed from the ground. They were puzzled, and all scratched their heads, and then stared at the bronze bell with their big eyes searching around, just in sight of the two who appeared to be in shape. For a time, all the ugly bodies screamed violently. The thick long canine teeth that had turned outwards became several times longer, and together with the body of more than a few feet, they began to linger with a dark breath. They were furious and strode forward to smash both Jian Wushuang and Di Qing. But Jian Wushuang didn't look at them or look at them. He stretched a finger forward, and the heavy strength like mountains and seas overflowed from his fingers, turning into thousands of magnificent horses, strangling them all. Strange. Why didn't I just destroy them just now? Di Qing was puzzled. Jian Wushuang just wanted to speak, but found that the ground was ringing again, and saw a plume of black smoke spreading from the ground, gathering sand into a tower, and transformed into more than 10 ugly forms. 12 forms, but none of them were small. You know, the blow that Jian Wushuang just made was enough to make Yangxian unable to lift his head, but it did not affect them at all. The 12 ugly physiques were even more violent, and they rushed in with terrifying fervor. Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were slightly frowned, and he pointed out again with one finger, and the force of force was several times more terrifying than before, and they were twisted into pieces again, without even a little breath. What are these things? Which is harder to kill than Yangxian? Di Qing also frowned. Although these guys were so unbearable, the resurrection one after another made him both curious. Unsurprisingly, the 12 ugly bodies once again condensed, but this time the body became a little darker. At this moment, a head came out of the curtain of the sedan chair, spit out the red thread in his mouth, and shouted angrily, "They are all nightmares, you can't kill them, hurry and escape." Nightmare? Interesting. Jian Wushuang smiled, and had already come up with a countermeasure. This time, he no longer directly killed, but released Yanli into a side cage to trap the 12 bodies in it, constantly pulling away, and consuming these guys. The so-called nightmare is a kind of extremely special energy. Their birth is even without substance, because it is conceived by people in their deep sleep, and only exists on the basis of a certain mysterious medium. This is why Jian Wushuang and Di Qing failed to kill them before. However, Jian Wushuang also saw that their energy was still limited. As long as they trapped them, their nightmare would naturally dissipate. Sure enough, the nightmares trapped in Yanli's cage were even more bleak, and they kept repeating the reciprocating movement, which was no longer alive. And the girl who was showing her head out of the flower sedan was very bright when she saw so many nightmares being killed by the town. Although her hands and feet were by the red rope, she jumped forward, rushed out of the sedan chair, and fell heavily on the ground. Ouch! She had a pain, frowning slightly, and her thin lips pursed. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing looked at each other, and then walked towards her. It is said that it is the most magnificent day for women to marry makeup. Right now this woman is even more so. She is wearing a bright red shoher suit, her eyebrows are like distant mountains, and her lips are like dots. Although she has blush on her cheeks, she still can't hide her heroism. In particular, there is a sesame mole on the corner of the mouth, which is even more lively and flexible. As soon as they saw her approaching, she nodded in excitement. "Girl, is this place called Shanghuang?" asked Shouwu Mushuang, and waved away the red string from her. The girl watched Jian Wushuang's eyes flashing, and quickly gave a gift. The little girl thanked the adult for help. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and asked the question just now. Shanghuang? But here is Qingju. The girl said, a little puzzled. Qingju, what is this place? Is it a state capital in Shanghuang? He and Diqing glanced at each other, and there was a kind of intuition in their hearts. They seemed to be pitted. It was urgent to ask the woman for a moment, and finally came to a real conclusion. They were really pitted. And the woman at the moment is not an ordinary woman, but the only daughter of Qingju's largest sect, who has visited several heavens earlier, and naturally knows the names of some heavens. The realm where Jian Wushuang and Diqing are located at the moment is actually called the Qingyu, and the wilderness that is close to the big sky is basically the two heavens. Damn things, dare to tease this seat. Di Qingqing angry, terrible Yanli escaped. Well, is a big deal, we will find it again, it won't take long. Jian Wushuang relieved him. The girl's dexterous eyes rolled around and then looked at Jian Wushuang. Master, are you going to the wasteland? Jian Wushuang nodded without concealing himself. That's great, I just knew. She hadn't finished her words yet, and the surrounding mountains and rivers shook suddenly. The earth was torn, the mountains collapsed, and the whole world was ruined. At the same time, the sky dome dimmed, and neither of his eyes could see the palm of his hand. The girl's complexion changed suddenly. It's Demon Venerable, Nightmare Demon Venerable is here. As her words fell, it seemed that there was some unnamed repression from the sky dome, which quickly swallowed and covered everything. The thick old wood can't bear the pressure, and the large area is fragmented. Chapter 48:13. It seemed that there was something asleep forever. Along with the shattered canopy of the canopy, it revealed that a gloomy sky was revealed. At the same time, there were bursts of whimpers resounding in Shino. Sir, let's go quickly. This deity respects the monk's mind and has the most intellectual power. If he is not careful, he will become his slavery. In the haze, the girl in the red shoher suit hurriedly urged, I know where the road is, please ask the two adults to leave with me. Jian Wushuang stood still in his place, his eyes turned to the sky. That special and thick breath was like a big man, trapping all three of them in it, blocking all the way. After that, 2 rounds of giant eyes like Qinghui Haoyue appeared, clean and clear enough to reflect the traces of everything. A few moments later, those 2 rounds of giant eyeballs suddenly produced hundreds of millions of black silk threads, which eventually condensed into a weird phantom at the end of the silk thread. The phantom is very hazy, as if it is formed by the amalgamation of various unknown substances, and it looks very strange. It is backed by those 2 huge and clear eye wheels, like 2 round wings. Such a so-called demon venerable, the strength of the realm is actually just a realm of immortality, and Jian Wushuang is naturally not afraid. Things that pretend to be fooled by ghosts can't be put on the table. Jian Wushuang's mood was already bad, and he released Yang Li directly, and he swung it out with a swish. The all-out blow belonging to the peak of Yangxian was unreserved and smashed the strange ghost image into the air. The humble servant, are you, etc., must all surrender to me. Xu Ying confided the truth and faced the blow of the Qing, apparently disdain dodge. At the next moment, an eye-popping scene appeared, and the gas field felt that the virtual shadow that shattered the sky was actually pulled directly from the sky by the slap of Jian Wushuang, and it was slammed into the ground fiercely. Thousands of smoke and dust. The girl was shocked and covered her mouth with one hand, looking at this scene in disbelief. Almost half of Qingju's heavens succumbed, and the trembling nightmare deity was actually caught by the unseen mountain in front of him, except for the handsome young man who looked like a crown jade, and slapped it into the ground. That's the deity of Yangxian realm. Then Jian Wushuang didn't think so. This so-called nightmare demon king, besides encroaching on the general state of mind through some kind of bewitching means, his real body was not even as good as the ordinary Yangxian. Even more unfortunately, Jian Wushuang's consciousness has already reached full consummation when he achieved ancestry in the divine universe, far from being comparable to this nightmare demon. Even if he stood still, letting the deity to nibble at the state of mind, he could only return without success. Naturally, Jian Wushuang is also too lazy to use a means to directly cover it with one palm. The deep black gas on the sky dome quickly dissipated, and two giant eye wheels like Hao Yue were also blinded by Di Qing. Humble slave, how dare you, how? Without saying a word, Jian Wushuang once again slapped the nightmare demon into the ground. Noisy. Jian Wushuang frowned. It was nothing but a nightmare that engulfed in greed. It was not worthy of him. Now that he knew that this place was not Shanghuang Tianyu, he and I Ching apparently did not intend to stay, turned around and prepared to leave. Adult, please stay. A cry rang out. It was the retention of the girl in Xiuhe suit. Seeing him looking back, her cheeks were even more ruddy, and she stretched her hands to pull up her sideburn-like broken hair. She looked like a very stiff figure and gave a salute. The little girl washes the pool and thanked the adults for their life-saving grace. Jian Wushuang didn't plan to wait for her to finish, just waved his hand, and he planned to leave. Hello, can you listen to Ben Aunt? The little girl finished speaking. The girl named Shi Chinky's voice was gentle. I'm aware of the upper wilderness that you mentioned. Jian Wushuang Wenyang paused and looked at her again, not sure. Do you really know? Shi Qingkai raised his eyebrows proudly. That is, of course, my father is the first suzerain of Qingju. The resources in his hands are not countable. At that time, I followed my father to travel to various heavens. He pondered for a moment, and then said, since that is the case, could the girl tell Shanghuang the approximate location? Is it important for you to go to Shanghai? That's right. Well, it's because you saved my aunt, the little girl's life, I decided to take you personally. I don't need it anymore. The journey is dangerous. No, I must be asked to take you there, but it is extremely desolate and secret. Even if I tell you the approximate location, you can't find it. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing looked at each other, and some were unsure. At this moment, the nightmare demon Venerable, who was almost distracted by the two slaps, quietly crawled out of the ground and was ready to escape. Shi Qingkai looked at the truth, and hurriedly said, Adult must not let him escape, he is a big harm. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and took a quick move. He immediately ingested the Demon King, and exquisitely squeezed it into the size of a projectile. Zikingqi was once again shocked by this method. The demon who could resist the chamber with her father was now rubbing up. Let go of the deity, the humble servant, you will regret it. The demon squeezed into projectile size jumped like thunder. He seemed to be screaming without fear. When Jian Wushuang was about to twist it out, Shi Qingkai suddenly stretched out two palms and caught his palm, his eyebrows bent into a crescent moon. Master, can you give me this thing? I plan to give it to me. Swallow taper swallowed. Jian Wushuang drew back his palm indifferently. By the way, the Demon King was thrown to her. Thank you, Master, Shi Qingkai said, and then he directly undid the red band that tied his hair, and the projectile-sized Demon King. Are you going to take us to the wasteland? Di Qing interjected and asked. Shi Qingkai nodded again and again. Of course, without my leadership, you will definitely not be able to go to Shanghuang. Then let's leave now? Jian Wushuang said. No hurry, please go back to the sect gate with me first. I plan to bring some things. Let's go again. Shi Qingqi rode, and then stride in the forest in a big step, reversing the previous little daughter's posture. Go ahead, hurry up to keep up. It's really troublesome. Sooner or later, I'll catch that thing, and I'll slap my bones. Jian Wushuang shook his head helplessly, and then followed him with the Qing Qing, who was wearing a red Xiuhe suit, and washed the pool. Thousands of Xuanqi mountains and rivers were left behind, and the number of monks gathered around the mainland began to increase. Chapter 48:14. It was only half a day before I went to find the elder Zongmen and a group of disciples who came to Zikingqi before they appeared. Li Bo, you can be regarded as coming. Shi Qingqian was sullen. Would you like to come to the Mosen's old den for a while later? Elder Zongmen, who is called Li Bo, has a calm complexion and holds a jade rod. After hearing her complaint, he smiles bitterly. My little ancestor, we are all desperate to find you. No, you will surely be able to find you in half a day. Shi Qingkai snorted, and then picked up the red belt tied with the deity, and shook it. This guy has been caught by the girl. The teacher returns to the sec. Li Bo was stunned. Before he could fix his mind, the figure of Shi Qingkai was already as far away as the same. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing also followed suit. Above a cloudless and voluminous Tsongshan mountain, there are more than 100 chains, traverse the various mountain ranges, and the sect gates on each peak are connected in series, which looks magnificent. This is the most prestigious sect gate in Qingju, named Shangqing Pavilion. Almost half of the monks in the heavens are honored to enter the Shangqing Pavilion. This is because the patriarch of the Shangqing Pavilion is an immortal Yangxian, and his disciples have more than a dozen powerful Yanyans. No matter which continent they look at, they are all dominated by Biju. The guarding mountain array that covered the entire Shangqing Pavilion also demonstrated its detachment. Although the Shoshan formation is just a matter of Jian Wushuang's wave, but he still condenses his breath and prepares to enter the mountain gate of Shangqing Pavilion. But then, more than 10 disciples of Shoshan flew directly from the dark and stopped them. Shangqing Pavilion is heavy, outsiders stop. A bunch of stupid things. Didn't you see that this is the noble guest invited by the girl? Shi Qingkai turned back, angrily. It's okay to wash the girl, we won't go in. We are waiting here for a day. If washing the girl is really inconvenient, I will retreat. Jian Wushuang whispered, but stepped back and waited. Well, after I pick up something, I will walk with you. Shi Qingkai hurriedly said, and the back shape flashed directly into the mountain gate. Looking at the figure that was quite off, Jian Wushuang always had a kind of unreliable hunch on his mind. Why don't you let me go? I'm going to go today, inside the pavilion of the Shangqing Pavilion. Zikingqi stood on a side of the mountain, akimbo, and his red makeup had been replaced with a plain shirt. Dare you dare to let me put on the wedding dress to elicit the nightmare demon venerable? Why don't you dare to let me go out of our heaven to visit now? Nonsense, Qingkai, please hurry me down. The middle-aged man in a white robe, restrained and glorious, yelled angrily. Zikingqi still has his hands on his hips. I don't, Zikinghua, you say yes or no. Don't agree. The middle-aged man was irritated. Do you know how much you weigh, a dead girl? Do you know the concept of Tianyu? A girl like you can't even get out of Tianyu and will be torn by the wind. Do you know? Come on, don't I hear that kind of falsehood? You don't want to lie to me. In short, I'm done this time, no one can stop me, Shi Qingkai said loudly. The middle-aged man apparently did not plan to endure this arrogant and willful girl. He stretched out his hand and waved 1,000 strands of huamang firmly to the washing pool, and dragged her off the rock. Wait, girl, you don't want to come up with 100 years of confinement. Ah, don't, Dad, I don't want to be confined. Shi Qingkai screamed, struggling, but she was just a master of Yang. How could she break free of Yang Xian's shackles? At this moment, a stream of streamers flew down the mountain and stone, cutting off the huamang in the middle-aged man's hand, and then directly carrying the wash pool and running. Because of the speed approaching the extreme, when he reacted, the streamer had already leaped more than 100 miles away. It was a snow-white, variegated, fox-like creature that resembled a kind of black tiger. Its speed was so fast that it escaped from the mountain gate of Shangqing Pavilion in a blink of an eye. All the elder disciples of Shangqing Pavilion listened to me and gave me a life of Zikingqi. If anyone took it down, I would give her a license. All the gates of the Shangqing Pavilion were sensation for a time, and a total of more than 60,000 disciples were dispatched to capture the Qingkai. Jian Wushuang, who had been waiting outside the mountain gate, raised his eyebrows slightly after hearing the warning sound from the sky. A moment later, a fragrant wind swept out of the mountain gate, riding across the cleansing pool on the back of the beast with a look of excitement. Master, my father, he agreed, let's run quickly. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing looked at each other, then shook their heads helplessly. This was a huge chase code in the undisputed Xuanao Mountain Gate. The three bodies broke through the clouds and soared, followed by tens of thousands of disciples behind the black pressure, quite a sense of panic. But with the help of Jian Wushuang and Yi Qing, those tens of thousands of disciples could only watch the three figures in the end, just like the stars disappeared in the sky. The middle-aged man hurried over after a while, but when he saw the empty clouds, there was still half of his daughter. He was desperate and roared, "Who is it, who abducted my daughter? Far away, it seems that the voice of Ziqingqi was sent from Duke Xiaoji. Dad, you can rest assured, I will be safe and sound. Maybe I can still find the mother during the journey. You bully the ancestor. The clouds of smoke dissipated, and the original blue sky vault disappeared, replaced by an endless void. The incountable big day stars dotted one side of the heavenly plain also flooded into her eyes. It's so beautiful, no wonder my mother will leave my father to travel to the void. Shiqing Kai murmured. Jian Wushuang didn't want to ask about her family's private affairs, and knew that the girl had stolen away from his father, so she planned to return it once she knew the specific location of Shanghuang. Immediately afterwards, he asked, I said to wash the girl, where is the location of Shanghuang Qianyu, do you know? Shiqing Kai was refreshed, his eyes blinked flexibly, and then he was affirmed, no, I must know, it's there. At the end of the speech, she stretched out her slender palms and pointed to a desolate emptiness that was rare even in the stars. Jian Wushuang and Yi Qing are now also regarded as dead horses as living horse doctors, no matter whether her words are true or false, and after confirming it again, they went forward. With his refuge in Yanli, although it was only a cleansing pool that entered Yanding's cultivation, he was able to cope with it in the face of the terrible void of the wind. Chapter 48:15. The beast that was originally cleaned under the pedestal was also shrunk to the length of her arm, squinting comfortably at the back of her neck. It's a dangerous thing to move around in the void without one person and one animal, but it's so long. Jian Wushuang is helpless. This girl is simply an extra-large burden. I really want to take her to Dami Tian. I am afraid I might have some trouble. Yi Qing's face was cold. Maybe not long ago, he was pitied by the few guys stationed in the fairy array, and he was not in a good mood. Naturally, he didn't have any good feelings about Shiqing Kai in his view. The lower the level of the guy, the more insidious and cunning, including the woman at the moment. Is the way you took really correct? Di Qing still asked her if she didn't believe her. Ziqingqi embraced the little beast, his eyes dodged, when, of course, right, me, but I came with my father. He sneered again, if you dare to lie to us, it will be like them in the end. At the end of the speech, Yi Qing's palm was squeezed away, and several ancient stars suddenly burst, and the unimaginable doomsday scene appeared in the void, and the whole void was collapsed into a black hole. Goo! The cleaning pool swallowed heavily, and the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. Such a devastating technique, I am afraid that her father can't do it. The little beast in her arms seemed to feel threatened and grinned towards the teeth. Okay, let's go ahead, Jian Wushuang said indifferently. The calm aura calmed down Qingqing, and no longer cleaned the pond. Recovering from the cold deterrence just now, Shiqing Kai had already secretly regretted leaving the original heaven. She shouted in her heart, that lousy is going to waste, who knows where it is. I just talk about it casually, should the punishment be so serious? Shanghuang, the so-called Shanghuang, as the name implies, is definitely a desolate and ruined heaven. It's definitely right to think about this. God bless me, I'm not pointing the wrong way, bless. Opening the bow did not turn back the arrow. Shiqing Kai had already decided the head iron in the end. Anyway, there was no escape route. She simply let go completely. In order to increase the credibility, she waved from time to time to correct the course of the advance, ran to the more remote and desolate void depth. Jian Wushuang nodded secretly. From the route she pointed to, it basically met the environment of Shanghuang Tianyu. As they moved forward, the sky planes in the vast sky were extremely scarce, and even the stars were sparse. Everything he sees is extremely cold. This boring to extreme, companionship with the cold void, made the cleaning pool tired from the initial excitement. This trip is independent of the sword she thinks about. Fresh clothes and angry horses are completely different kinds of existence. But if I choose this way myself, there is no turning back. The journey in the void seemed to never end. The cleaning pool was already dizzy and muddled. And Jian Wushuang finally seemed to be in this void, smelling some kind of forbidden breath. Yi Qing also felt it naturally, opened a pair of golden eyes to explore. That kind of prohibitive breath reveals the ancient, silent, and extremely secretive. Obviously, the power of this kind of breath restraint is laid, and it does not want to be noticed. Jian Wushuang was most sensitive to the breath, and soon his eyes locked on the depth of the void in front of him. There was no one knowing how many years it was, and no monk stepped into the ancient heaven. Is there a wasteland there? Jian Wushuang whispered softly, but quickly denied it again. The wasteland is a hairless land, with a hot and dark red shape like purgatory, which is almost completely different from this heavenly plane. But for the sake of insurance, he decided to go and find out. The three bodies are like streamers flying towards the unknown sky. That kind of deserted, silent atmosphere of restraint envelops the entire plane of heaven, like a thick layer of water waves. Entering into it, suddenly an unparalleled pressure blessing. Shiqing Kai snorted, and his whole body suddenly collapsed. This heavy pressure is that even Jian Wushuang feels strenuous, let alone her. Looking around, the entire heavenly plane is composed of rugged dark red rocks, boundless and borderless. There is no other than the rock. That kind of prohibitive breath is more obvious, but I don't know where it came from. Are you sure this is a wasteland? Di Qing asked Jian Wushuang while looking at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang looked around, and finally looked at the Shiqing pond. With his refuge, Shiqing Kai quickly recovered from the confusion, but when the two looked at him, they suddenly felt a cold sweat. It seems, probably not. Is it right or not? Di Qingsheng screamed. Vicious. Shiqing Kai didn't dare to finish it, but just shook his head. No, certainly not. Jian Wushuang heard and said, since it is not, let's leave, the journey can't be delayed. Di Qing nodded, and when he was about to leave, Shiqing Kai suddenly screamed. The little beast that had been entrenched in her neck seemed to be pulled by some unknown force and fell straight down. San Qing, she exclaimed, then rushed to the ground desperately. Jian Wushuang's brows were slightly frowned, and his figure flashed down. Perhaps because of that kind of prohibition, the gravity of this whole sky is up to 1,000,000 times, and the speed of falling is even more terrible. Afterwards, a bunch of Chinese mangosteens pulled down the falling beast and washed the pool, and finally let her fall to the ground. Shiqing Kai hugged the little beast and sat on the ground looking gratefully at Jian Wushuang. Don't be so reckless next time, leave at a speed, he said indifferently, and then turned to leave. At this time, that wild, silent atmosphere seemed to wake up from a long time ago, and emerged thinly. Emperor, are you here? There was a thunderous sound with excitement in all the sky. The voice has order, avenue, and blessings of luck. It is extremely complicated and rare. Shiqing Po was shocked to stand up in an instant, and jumped towards the back of Jian Wushuang as if he were walking away. Emperor, are you here? Are you here to lead us? The voice was thick, and there was some uncertainty in the excitement, and he was asking carefully. Di Qing was also shocked. Facing the breath of that voice, he felt like he was facing a big enemy. Jian Wushuang said nothing in silence, and at the same time backed away without any trace, ready to escape at any time. So far, he understands that it is very likely that an unintentional intrusion into this heavenly domain has sealed the existence of a certain ancient power. Chapter 48:16. Moreover, the existence of this ancient power is very likely that Zhen Wuyang was sealed off from Zhen Wuyang when he opened up his domain. Shiqing Kai squatted behind Jian Wushuang and stared at the beautiful eyes in horror. Emperor, why don't you speak? The voice that could deter the truth, but very cautious, showed a sense of surrender. Jian Wushuang, who was also a little nervous at first, calmed down, because he heard the respect in his voice, the mellow feeling, which was by no means a treacherous villain. Wushuang, leave this place quickly, Di Qing said cautiously. Jian Wushuang looked at him, and then said, no hurry, let's wait here for a moment. When he was finished, he walked slowly. Wait for me. Ziqingqi quickly followed, fearing that it would be half a point behind. Taiqing frowned, and eventually followed without saying a word. The reason why Jian Wushuang didn't leave, but moved forward slowly, was because the sound of the call gave him an inexplicable and intimate feeling. The more you move forward, the more clear the voice becomes. Secretary, see the Emperor. An ancient scream seemed to come from the heart of the earth, respectful and pious. Jian Wushuang's heart moved, and then he looked at the rugged mountain stones under his feet. Those voices obviously came from the heart of the earth. After a moment of silence, he said, I am just a passerby, not your emperor. Those voices disappeared, and then resounded again, it's impossible, your whole body has the breath of an emperor, how could it not be a prince of a prince? Are you Emperor Renunciation? The voice suddenly felt sad and lonely. I'm really not your emperor, I'm just a passerby who didn't intend to break in here. Jian Wushuang was helpless, and he asked, what is your emperor, what is the name? The voices suddenly became alert again. Are you, Jian Wuyang's seated eagle dog? Jian Wushuang responded, no, rest assured. The voice was silent for a moment, and finally said, the real name of the emperor is the Six-Crow Emperor. My heart moved like a thunder that exploded. I sent the name of the Emperor Six Crows, the master of the former heavenly court who had previously entered into Wushuang and other people without any intention. The real name of the emperor could not be repeated. In combination with the excitement of these previous voices and piety, they were definitely the subjects of the Emperor of the Six Crows. It's just that it's too coincidental. A heavenly field that I didn't intend to enter, the power that was sealed in it was actually related to the Six Crow Emperors. Since you say you are a guest, why is there the breath of Emperor Liu Crow? Jian Wushuang heard and said, a sentence or two of this matter are unclear. Please show up. The world was silent for a long time, and the voice sighed, it's not that we don't want to show up, we are really weak, our fairy source is imprisoned by the eagle dog under the true Wuyang seat, the fairy body is bound, and we can't move it for half. The sword moved uncontrollably, and through those sounding directions, he had determined that the place where they were imprisoned was in the divine peak directly in front. He flew away directly, facing the Shenfeng, palms and fingers like a sword, with thousands of sword intentions, carrying the momentum to cut off the Shenfeng. Boom! The whole Shenfeng is divided into two, and at the same time Jian Wushuang releases the sword intention one after another, like carving, constantly cutting Shenfeng. In the end, the whole Shenfeng was cut, leaving only a base of thousands of feet. Then, with a wave of his hand, the stone chips kept peeling off, eventually revealing a chain of thick and long dragons. There are thousands of chains, and at the end of the chains, there are 18 bodies trapped. The clothing on them was already broken, and the trapped limbs were twisted in a rather strange posture, apparently broken. This is a total of 18 figures, which were printed in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Shi Qingkai covered his mouth with his hands, afraid to make a sound. Di Qing also frowned, and was always vigilant. 18 body shapes, 18 great Yangxian. It's just that they are so miserable, it still makes Jian Wushuang unexpected. Faced with such a huge movement, these 18 bodies are naturally aware, but they are all at a loss, and no one looks at Jian Wushuang, as if there is no such thing as sword Wushuang. Jian Wushuang looked at them and quickly found out the reason. These 18 great Yangxian, all their eyes have been dug out, only empty eyes, naturally cannot see the outside world. Are you still there? The old man with a long eyebrow headed, asked carefully. Jian Wushuang nodded, I'm here. In this case, can you tell me why you have the breath of Emperor Six Crows? Naturally, I can tell, Jian Wushuang had no intention of concealing it, but even if he had no intention of entering the heavenly court of the Six-Crow Emperor, and how to gain the perception of the Six-Crow Emperor, he spoke to them carefully. Ding Qing was cautious and directly released the Yang Li, wrapping up the wash pool with his ears ready to listen to ensure that Jian Wushuang's words would not be heard by anyone other than them. After all, such matters are matters of life and death, and if they come out, the consequences will be catastrophic. Time goes by. When Jian Wushuang's voice finally stopped, everything was silent. The 18 Dayan immortals were silent, as if their hearts were dead. Since their eyes were dug out, they naturally couldn't cry in sorrow, but just sluggishly. In the end, the old man with long eyebrows asked in a loud voice, are you all dead? Yes, there is no Yangxian, Da Yangxian, survive. If the sword is unparalleled, it is like a sharp knife cutting them fiercely. Slowly lowering his head, the old man with long eyebrows mourned, the servants are incompetent, and ultimately failed to keep the heaven and protect the emperor. The practice has been tempered all the way to the present, making Jian Wushuang like a rock, but a complete state of mind does not mean cold blood. He had seen countless immortal bones in that realm, and each immortal bone was once the immortal that dominated the heaven, but belonged to the war between emperors and kings, and they all died. The reason I have seen it, so there will be resonance, and naturally they can feel their death. Jian Wushuang said these things, and his mood seemed to be somewhat transparent. In the end, the old man with long eyebrows slowly raised his head, looked in the direction of Jian Wushuang, and said slowly, "Since the emperor finally gave you the inheritance and sentiment to you, then live well. Although I always want Zhen Wuyang to perish, I want to tell you that you should never fight with him, leave him, and live with the wish of the 6 Crow Emperors." "Why?" Jian Wushuang looked at him and asked. Chapter 48:17. The long-browed old man's voice was full of irrepressible sorrow and despair. "There is no reason. Zhen Wuyang is in an unknown luck, and even the emperor cannot kill him. As long as he does not want to die, no one can kill him. If you face him one day, it will only die in vain in the end. Rather than die, it is better to take the last wish of the 6 Crow Emperor and leave Zhen Wuyang far away." For his words, Jian Wushuang is undisputed, because with his current state and strength, fighting with the emperor is still too far away for him. Then Jian Wushuang said, "I'll consider what you said, but before that, I can ask you what was wrong under the throne of the 6 Crows, and why are you trapped here?" The long-browed old man heard the words, and his mournful face slowly converged. He said, 18 of us were all on duty together under the throne of the 6 Crow Emperor, controlling the flow of gas throughout the heavenly courts, and the changes in the astrology. Emperor Crow was named as 18 spectators. The reason why it will be sealed here is because it was designed by Zhen Wuyang. He took the oath when he went to war. As long as I waited for the 18 observers to find the most suitable place for him to build the heavenly court, he would not go to war with us. I never thought that all this was a conspiracy that he had long expected. After controlling the 18 visions in his hands, he resolutely attacked the heaven of the 6 Crows. But we didn't know the news. After being controlled by Zhen Wuyang, we set out to choose a place for him to create heaven. Finally, his heavenly court was completed, and we were immediately destroyed by the eagle dog under his seat, cut off the fairy body, cut out his eyes, and were trapped under this dark sky until today. Elders with long eyebrows looked calm, as if they were talking about other people's affairs, but Jian Wushuang knew that their hearts could never be calm. The fairy source was damaged, the fairy body was cut off, and the eyes were cut out and trapped in the cold dead zone to this day. This is capital punishment. Who can endure this kind of heart so far? But that's it. 18 Dian immortals waited so far, hoping that the 6 Crow Emperors would take them back. What came was the desperate news that even the emperor had made it ancient. "Your Excellency, I have a ruthless request from the 18 observers. I hope you agree," the old man with long eyebrows said. "Now in the old court, the emperors are ancient, and only 18 of us are left, and they have no use, so I would like to invite you to be able to spare no effort and execute me. It is also a relief." Jian Wushuang's brows were slightly wrinkled, and it was absolutely impossible for him to kill them. The emperor of the 6 Crows alone is so gracious that he cannot kill them, even with good intentions. After a moment of contemplation, he flew straight ahead and came to them. 6 Crow Emperor is kind to me, and you are also the last 18 remaining in the heavenly court. I can't deal with you. Thinking about it, I can only take you away. After Jian Wushuang's words were finished, the invisible long sword condensed in his palm would cut off the chain around them. "Your Excellency." It seems that Jian Wushuang had already expected to do this. The old man with a long eyebrow hurriedly said, "There is a prohibition planted by Zhen Wuyang on this chain. Once there is external damage, he will inevitably find it in the first place. None of us can live." Jian Wushuang stopped in time, frowning tightly, and the close of the chain was indeed planted under scrutiny, that is to say, as long as the chain was damaged, Zhen Wuyang would surely find it in the first place. In waiting for the 18 observations, only one death, but also Your Excellency. This time, their 18 great Yangxian said at the same time. "Death is impossible, at least you don't think about dying in my hands," Jian Wushuang said, There are only 18 of you remaining in the entire heavenly court. If you die again, then the 6 Crow Emperor's heaven is the real death. You let me live well, and you yourself can live well too. But we. The long-browed old man couldn't bear to say that they lived with this look, which was far less happy than the death. Listen, you are still like this. How can I rescue you one day when I have enough strength or can't be discovered by Zhen Wuyang? Jian Wushuang condensed his voice and said very seriously. 18 figures, no one spoke this time. Your Excellency, why do you suffer? There is nothing bitter or painful, just when I received the grace of the 6 Crow Emperor, and the grace of returning him bit by bit is. For a long while, the old man with long eyebrows solemnly said, well, how about we wait? Your Excellency, just go, if you have enough strength in 1 year, and you can still think of me, come on, then I will wait for 18 views like, let the Lord send you. It's not necessary to send, you just have to remember that I am gracious. I don't think it will be too late that day, waiting for me. Jian Wushuang said with a wave of his hand. I'm also exploring a thing now. I can't delay it here for too long. Please forgive me. The old man with long eyebrows nodded. Go ahead, sir, don't forget to wait for me. Jian Wushuang arched his hands at them, then slowly backed away. As he was about to leave, he turned back and said loudly, you, and remember my name is Jian Wushuang. Okay, we all remember. Shenfeng finally condensed again, and sealed the 18 visions together again, together with the dust, and the unbearable memory. Jian Wushuang sighed silently in his heart, and then took Di Qing and Shi Qing Po to leave this unintentional heaven. Endless Shouyuan is a deep cold prison cage for those desperate Dian immortals who came from the bottom of their hearts and is the capital punishment. They cannot change any status quo, they can only trust the unknown. What Jian Wushuang can do is to read the book www.ukanshu.com elevates their realm to free them from this purgatory. Everything is miserable, even if it is as strong as Dian's yarn, it is like a lonely boat, silent in the torrent that is about to rise. This vast territory is like a prison cage without a prison door. Every other era, some upheaval may occur. However, it is so cruel to study the dust of a grain of dust in the great Yang Huan, so how does Da Yang Huan exist? When the entire Dian Huan is exposed in front of Jian Wushuang, what kind of scene should it be? Xian Yi, his master. Old master, his mentor. What role will they play here? He was looking forward to it. Fear was never his way of solving things, starting from the end of the day, and finally on the road, his eyes never feared. There are mountains and no roads in front of you, then open up an avenue abruptly. Chapter 48:18. Jian Wushuang's body is full of pride, an unprecedented surge. I am afraid that even he himself will not know, precisely because of the qualities he possesses, how much of the antiquity will be pleasing to the heart. After entering this great research world, he had done with the former Hong Chen. But who is the ultimate in reading all things, who can believe that he can cut off the past? Everything is unknown, everything is just like the new dawn. Following the cleaning pool next to him, he glanced at him from time to time, and quickly pretended to look in the other direction casually, so reciprocating, but also tireless. Di Qing always frowned, and finally couldn't help but say, Wushuang, you were too reckless just now. If that was a trap, I'm afraid I won't even have the chance to escape now. Sorry, I was really too impulsive before. I just felt that voice was too kind, like some kind of unseen old friend, and would go deep into the danger. Jian Wushuang apologized. Di Qing looked at him and said, even if this is the case next time, it's better not to get involved in danger. Every quirky heaven in this big domain is full of immortal bones. Zhen Wuyang's original pioneering battle, so the killings created are far from what you can imagine. Today's Oasis realm was formed by including the realm of the 8 emperors at the time. Just as far as I know, 4 emperors fell into his hands. Don't try to go against him, he is terrible. At this moment, Di Qing's eyes became dignified. Jian Wushuang nodded, he has no injustice with me, and I certainly will not face him. Di Qing looked at the void in the distance. Is it? This great Yang is very complicated, even if there is no injustice or hatred between you, You will not endlessly die. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and stopped talking. Shi Qingkai feels that the dialogue between them is simple but complex and difficult to understand. It is like an explanation of a certain cloud and fog, full of uncertainty. But soon, she became nervous again, because the two of them looked at her again together. Girl, it's time to show the way. Well, I just need to keep walking forward, I know. Shi Qingkai wailed inwardly. She could only continue this lie and could not look back. She believes that as long as she tells the truth, she may be crushed to death on the spot. Under the guidance of Shiqing Pond, Jian Wushuang and Yi Qing flew all the way, and in every breath, they could cross the cold and dead heavenly plains of several squares. Going to Damientian, where the sun is correct, the journey has so far been only dead and cold, and each heaven is like a barren land. It seems that no one has ever set foot in it. But gradually, the further forward, the void that was originally only reflected in the faint and aging stars began to become brighter. It was dim and dim as if reflected in the blood-like afterglow. Jian Wushuang didn't even notice anything strange, but the eyes of Di Qing showed doubt and caution in his eyes. He smelled a trace of familiarity. Then, when the first hazy light came into his eyes, he finally knew where the familiarity came from. It is a hibiscus tree, an endless hibiscus tree. Each strand of leaves, like a bronze casting, blooms in the void, and the dim light shining in the void is also coming out of the branches and leaves. Right now, the void in front becomes misty, replaced by an unimaginable sea. And the endless hibiscus trees grow in this sea area, listing 2 rows, which have been spreading to the infinite distance with the sea area. This scene shocked Jian Wushuang, just like a fairy trail, unimaginable. No one of them would think that the road to the sky ahead will be replaced by a sea area where one side cannot know where its latitude is. After hesitating for a moment, Jian Wushuang and Di Qing looked at each other, then walked forward and flew over the sea. Each hibiscus tree on both sides is like a fairy trail standing upright, the halo emitted from the magnificent branches and leaves shining on the body, there is an indescribable warmth. Each hibiscus tree growing on this sea area is far more than several times larger than the only hibiscus tree in the northern celestial state. Jin Wudi Qing, with ancestral blood on his body, is proud, and will only reveal his true appearance on the hibiscus tree, and then rest. At this moment, he was already extremely relaxed, and the skin exposed to the outside of the Chinese suit already had golden veins flowing. But Jian Wushuang did not relax his vigilance. The more unusual the place, the more unexpected things will happen. For example, when he first entered the Great Voyage in Dianhuan, no one would think that there would be a terrible giant sea-sky chapter under the sea. So he was vigilant at all times. And the wash pool that embraced the little animal already had eye movements and was amazed. This kind of fantasy is so extreme that it is like a fairyland, so she can't help but get lost. Jian Wushuang beat her at the right time with vigorous force, so as not to let her get lost. The 3 figures traveled through the Fusang waterway. Are you saying that the end of the waterway will be connected to Demission? Diqing asked. We have been traveling for some time now, and it should be reasonable that we should be arriving soon. Jian Wushuang did not speak, but looked at the Shiqing Pond beside him. The corners of her lips stiffened and raised. Don't worry, it's coming soon, I have a hunch. I hope so. Tai Qing's voice was cold, and she did not look at her, soaring forward evenly. I don't know how long it has passed. Before the unobstructed view of the open sea, there was suddenly a white pontoon boat floating leisurely. Jian Wushuang was vigilant directly, and at the same time secretly tried to deal with the situation that might arise next. That leaf by Peng alone boat leisurely complacent, Ukanshu. No matter how the 3 men of Jian Wushuang soared, it was hanging in front of them, neither far nor close. You travelers, traveling along the road, it is better to come to the boat for a while to relieve the difficulties. A thick and old voice rang from the boat and passed into Jian Wu's ears. Di Qing looked at him, shaking his head without trace, and begging him not to go. But at the next moment, the change was abrupt, and when they saw that they were not passing by, that by Peng lone boat actually drove backwards. In an instant, he stopped in front of Jian Wushuang and others. This speed surprised them all, and they were all ready to fight. You travelers, don't need to have any worries, board the ship, The old man will take you for a while. In Yu Guzhou, an old man wearing a dancing robe turned his head to look at them and smiled calmly. A Yingrun chess piece sandwiched between his and his food would not fall. Chapter 48:19. Looking towards the solitary boat, there was no chess on one chessboard and 2 dancing robe. However, Jian Wushuang did not leave, but arched his hands. Old gentleman, thank you for your kindness. It's just that we are on a different path, so we won't bother. It's okay, although the endpoint is different, but during this time, we can move forward together, and our 2 old guys haven't spent time with outsiders. The old man in the dancing robe smiled, and then the chess piece between his fingers landed on the chessboard. In the face of this repeated invitation, Jian Wushuang was somewhat vigilant. There is a boat crossing, so you can save some energy to deal with what may happen next, I senti it. After Dao said this, he stopped talking, and instead he played chess with another Dao. Jian Wushuang, who was still vigilant, was relieved, and his figure fell into a lone boat. That kind-hearted and devoted man, and another unsmiling old-style killer on the chessboard, could not care about chatting with Jian Wushuang and others. Sir, this place is so beautiful. Shiqing Kai was behind him, and could not help but whisper softly. But Jian Wushuang didn't talk to her. After coming to the lone boat from his figure, his eyes were all placed on the chessboard. This is a strange game. There is no black spot on the whole chessboard. The 2 masters are all white. Bai Zixiang has already passed half a round. He wondered, it was all white, how did the 2 masters identify who was the adversary? Are they like the ancestors of Feng Tian, who used to be a divine universe, and they are both bad chessmen with poor chess skills? Even though Sword Warrior is even worse than Feng Tianzi's playing chess, he never knew it, but he watched the game carefully. Soon, he was shocked. Because he couldn't understand anything, the 2 sides stopped, and he couldn't even tell the enemy. However, Jian Wushuang's heart is clear, and these 2 old-fashioned chess skills can never be his wild fox like him, nor like Feng Tian's ancestors. After several chaotic eras, they only know to block the eyes, but they are not mediocre. It's a real master. Even though Jian Wushuang can't distinguish the enemy from both sides of Bai Zi, he can clearly see the offensive of the 2 masters. The old-fashioned chess game, which looks kind, is as fierce as the top, and he likes to siege and eat. And the old man who has not spoken from beginning to end and is unsmiling, but on the contrary, has a gentle attitude, is not anxious and impatient, and slowly draws his attention. Moreover, this game is only over half. When the unsmiling old man stopped, the sympathetic old man was immediately annoyed. It shouldn't be, how could it be lost? At this time, looking at a fresh cleansing pool, I couldn't help but say, it's really strange, the chess should be black and white, how can you tell the same chess piece? The sympathetic old roomer said that the originally annoyed expression also eased down, and turned to look at the Shiqing pond. Your girl doll is also interesting, sincere, and is a good cultivator. My chess piece does not distinguish between black and white, only one color, that is because waiting for a fate to hold the black piece to come and try. Shiqing Kai smiled and said, don't you play chess with you, you have to prepare your own pieces. The sympathetic old man smiled and shook his head, no longer talking, but turned around and shuffled the full set of chess pieces. Quickly, another game. Another old man who hadn't spoken, finally said, come on? You have nothing to press me, you know? Let's come, this game may not be who wins or loses, hurry up. The sympathetic old man put on a posture and started a new round of fighting. Jian Wushuang did not speak, staring at the new round of chess. But soon, similar scenes were staged again, and the stubborn murderous and kind old man was defeated again. It shouldn't be, why did I lose again? He scratched his head, looking worried. There was a smug expression on Lung Yintao's face. Old things, you lost again, say what are you going to mortgage to me? The sympathetic old man looked mournful, reached out and rubbed his body around, and soon looked to Jian Wushuang for help. You can lend me the same thing and mortgage it to that old thing, then the old man will repay it. Jian Wushuang opened his mouth and finally said, what? Anything is fine, make a good connection. The gentleman looked at him. Since it was just anything, Jen Wushuang thought about it for a moment, and took out a full-bodied pill from Naji. "I'd like to ask you to reach out and rub Dan pills for 1 or 2. The gentleman said with a smile. Although it was a little weird, Jen Wushuang did the same, and then handed him the pill that had been rubbed by hand. The amiable gentleman hurled away and threw the Naden pill to the cold noodles gentleman. "Quick leave." Leng Miandao took Dan Maru into his arms and got up and gave up his seat. "Xiaoyu, how about let's kill a game while there is still some time?" The genial gentleman also got up and gestured to him. Jen Wushuang, who stood aside with his arms folded, was a little stunned. This kind of invitation is a public sentence for him, a foul chess basket that can be easily defeated even by the ancient ancestors. That one is not good at playing chess, but he still doesn't step forward to show his ugliness. Jen Wushuang accosted a smile and waved his hands again and again. The sympathetic old man said with a smile, "It's okay, the worst is just to block the eyes, old man can take the next 2. Under such an invitation, Jen Wushuang is not good to quit anymore, and can only sit on his head. Xiaoyu, although this piece has only one color, but it has its own changes, only the player can see it." He smiled and pointed at the piece in the chessboard. Slowly spitting out a murky breath, Jen Wushuang pressed his finger into the chessboard, ingested a white piece, and then landed on the star position. There is no change in Bazi, is pure white as jade. The sympathetic gaze kept watching the settled piece tightly, but there was no change, and there was a touch of loneliness and disappointment in the depths of my eyes. But soon he returned to business as usual, holding his son and Jen Wushuang together. And this game of foreseeable ending before the start naturally ended a moment later with the defeat of Jen Wushuang. "I lost." Jen Wushuang smiled helplessly. "Why don't you, little friend, work hard in the future, and you will be able to wait for me to compete with each other." Awakening Fusu smiled. Jen Wushuang waved his hand and did not speak. They met and walked by for the occasion. After they left, they wanted to see them again. The sympathetic Dao said immediately, "I owe something to the little friend. If I see each other again in the future, I will repay it twice." A piece of pill, although it is a treasure, is no different from ordinary things for Jen Wushuang. It is nothing, so he does not intend to take it back one day. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.